How was
All right.
Shabbat?
Quiet, I guess.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yours?
So fast. It was excellent. The wonderful Shabbat. Baruch Hashem. I'd say better than normal, but
Oh, wow. That's great.
for the boondocks,
I was going to Louisiana Shabbat sure can be tricky.
you can, yeah, you could get bit by a gator.
You could. You could. While you're
Curious.
eating the crawfish, you could get hurt.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
It can be a swampy Shabbos. Yada, bo nathil. Let's begin.
So we have a few people that uh, won't be here who are normally here, so we're going to be have shorter list of readers, just
Okay.
FYI. Mhm.
Not a big deal.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead. I'll share my screen and we'll jump right in. As long as we still have our dear friend Heather to walk us between the mitzvot, not get lost in the numbers, right?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a volunteer for the short prayer that we say when we enter a house of study? You don't have to read the whole thing, just up to apostrophe, up to a comma, rather. And if you don't feel confident, then even one word.
I don't feel confident. Can I go?
Yes, sir, but I more than one word for you.
Yes, sir. Of
We have
course.
different standards for
Yeah.
for you, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, but go right ahead. All right, we're going
Yehi,
from right to left.
Yehi, Ratzon, Milvanecha,
Right? Make
Milfanecha.
sure, yeah, make sure we make a distinction between a letter kaf with no dots and one with a dot. It's very important in Hebrew,
Right.
unless you want a super thick accent.
Uh, Adonai, Elohai.
Excellent. May it be favorable or your will before you, O eternal, my God. Mi haba. Who's next? Mi haba. Just
I'll
four
take
words.
I'll take another batch here.
Go right ahead. B'chavad.
Uh, Shelo, A, A, Akshel,
Right?
Aksha,
How many vowels do you see in this word?
Akashal,
There you go. Akashel. Akashel.
mm, Akashel, Bidvar, Halacha.
Beautiful. So maybe your will, O eternal my God, that not shall I stumble in a matter of halacha. I shall not stumble on a point of practical application of your Torah. Right? Mi haba. Who's next? Mi haba. Heather, you with us?
Ani
Probably.
habaa.
Ah, yay, Heather. Yalla. Kol hakavod.
Shelo umar al tameh tahar wa al tahar tameh.
Beautiful. You want to translate? Come on, you can do this.
Um,
You can do this. So she is a it's a abbreviation of a very common Hebrew word, asher. It's frequent in a lot of blessings that we say, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav. So asher means that which or who. And everybody should have a pen and paper with them. Uh, that if you really want to get the most out of our lessons, every episode, but especially in the ones dedicated to learning Hebrew. So she is a frequent prefix to Hebrew words, which is an abbreviation of the word asher, Ashair. That means that which or who. So shelo, that not. Right? You can pick it up from here. The aleph prefix means I shall. So that not shall I, or that not I shall. Go ahead. You can do this.
that I shall not call that which is
Tameh.
Yeah, I always get
Oh,
tameh and tahor confused.
okay, no,
I
not
know
a
one is
problem.
pure and one is impure, but I can't
Yes.
remember which one's which.
So, for whatever reason, in this prayer, this traditional prayer, they're beginning with the negative. So, in all of these, they're beginning with no, that's not right, not in all of them, but on the first part, they're beginning with the negative. So, impure, tameh is impure. Think of it like tummy. You're going to be upset if you see that you're getting a tummy, right? What do we call that? There's a English term for this, and it's useful to use when learning languages. What do we call those? When we create a blank device.
Mnemonic?
Yes. So if you can create mnemonic devices, no matter how silly or ridiculous they are, if they help jog your memory, it's well worth it. So for tame, think tummy. If you see you got a big tummy in the mirror, it's probably not going to make the happiest feeling, right? So tame is the negative of these two, if you get confused between the two.
Okay.
So tame is impure. So that I shall not say regarding what is tame, what's impure.
That it is pure.
Nachon. And how do we say pure?
Tahor.
Nachon, nachon. Okay, milah haba'ah, next word, milah haba'ah.
And that?
All right, so that is she, almost
Okay.
always. She or asher. So al means on, about, or regarding. Let's write that down. Let's write that down. Very common word. As frequent as you'd say it in English, just the same in Hebrew. On, about, or regarding. So neither or shall not I say regarding. Here's al already once.
Mm-hmm.
I should not say regarding what is impure, tameh, that it is pure, tahor. Nor, and you're going back to the beginning, shelo, nor that I should say regarding
What
al.
is pure,
That's
that
right.
it is impure.
All right, so everybody, let's say this together. You don't have to say it with your microphone on, but go ahead and say out loud. Tahor is pure, right? Pure is tahor. Pure, tahor. Impure, tameh. Right? Impure is tameh. 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 All right, mihaba. Who's next? One of the big benefits of ritual, needless to say, it can become a stumbling block if not used correctly, right? You can miss the forest for the trees because of ritual. However, ritual exists for a reason. One of the huge advantages is, especially when it comes to learning the Hebrew language, that you get repeated exposure to the same words until you master them. If you learn a list of 10 vocabulary words, but you're not seeing them frequently early on after having learned them, they're exceedingly less likely to get embedded in your subconscious. But if you're learning 10 words and then you're hearing them from the get go every week, you are far more likely to hear them. So the practice of saying standardized prayers, which should never be to the exclusion of personalized prayer, it should be together with it. But this usage of standardized prayer helps maintain a working uh, uh, reservoir. I don't know the best word for it. It helps maintain a working um, knowledge of common Hebrew words, right? You'll be hearing them frequently, and that's extra important when you're not in a established Jewish community or not in Israel. It's extra important in that scenario when you're all by yourself that you will be saying standardized prayers so that you can make sure that you're hearing these words. Because if you don't hear it from yourself or you don't turn on a Hebrew movie or something to watch, you're not gonna hear it, right? We have to be realistic about it. So I strongly encourage everybody, not to the exclusion of your personal prayers, but in addition to them, to make a habit of learning these standardized prayers in Hebrew, right? And you don't have to do it all at once. You can just do the first phrase or the first sentence in Hebrew and everything else in English until that gets easy. And then slowly, you add on more and more in Hebrew. All right. Mishpat haba, next sentence, or next phrase, rather. Do we have a volunteer?
Tur sheli.
Kol hakavod. Your turn. Tur shulcha.
Wa'al matar
All right, let's be careful. So ma,
mutar
if we say
mutar.
matar,
Mm,
if we
mm.
say matar, that sounds like the same vowel, matar. So that would either mean that this you should see twice or this you should see twice. But the fact that they're different should tell us they're different vowels. All right? Matar is actually rain, and that's a
Okay.
completely different word. An excellent example of how distinguishing between the Hebrew letters is also very important, ideally. So if you see these stair steps, this is an oo vowel, like an EW, or like the sound of a cow, MOO, moo.
Well, I was thinking cow droppings, but okay.
Yeah. See, that's a
Mutar.
mnemonic device.
See?
Yeah, it may sound gross, but mnemonic devices, if they work for you, then it's valuable. It's not nonsense. So if you think,
It's stuck now for at least another minute. Okay.
all right, so you see these, then you can think move. All right, when you see these stair step
Mutar.
dots, you got it. Mutar. And mutar
Mutar.
means untied, pun intended. So this is the common word for permitted, but technically it means untied or loosened, right? That goes well with your mnemonic device,
Okay.
mutar. All right,
Mutar.
so we shouldn't say regarding what is mutar that it is excellent.
Asur.
All right, and what is asur?
Uh, um,
If
permitted.
mutar is permitted, if mutar is
Uh,
permitted, what is asur?
not permitted.
Correct. All right, and on a literalist level, mutar is released or unbound, untied, and
Mhm.
asur is bound. Right? Some of you may have said this prayer in Hebrew when the hostages were released. Baruch atah Hashem matir asurim. Right? So the word for asur or an asir, someone who is in bondage, a captive, is clearly related to the word asur, which is forbidden. They're both bound. They're both tied. All right. Bo namshich. Let's continue.
Wa'al asur mutar.
Let's say this last one more time. Slowly, carefully.
Mutar.
All right, so
Mutar.
that's right, mutar. All right, we need to hear a clear distinction between the vowels.
Hmm. Maybe this will help someone, but where you see the first letter has the two, not that one, where you shorten the sound, or it
Oh,
everything's
the two little dots right
that's
here?
where I think that's what I see sometimes as I'm scanning quickly. I need to learn to differentiate. But yes,
Definitely. Yeah,
between
this and this, these two vowels under each of these letters are
mhm,
completely different. They're not even similar,
sure,
their function. But
right.
I've never even thought about that. It's kind of unusual that they do look slightly similar, even though they're so different. Interesting. All right. So in the same way that we ask God that he should strengthen us to be cautious and to avoid um, calling impure what is pure and vice versa. So we should also be just as cautious to avoid calling what is permitted forbidden. All right. And go ahead and you can translate the last part that you just read. And al means regarding or on or over.
Regarding what is forbidden as being permitted.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And you notice you have to fill in a lot in between the words, much more than in English. Hebrew is a very terse language compared to English, very terse. But it's not all guesswork. There are patterns you will pick up as you go along. All right. Mi haba, who's next? We have five members with us. Well, that's excluding myself. So would anybody like to work on even just one word? This is a short word. You can do it. Right? If you're not sure how to put it together, just identify the name of the letter if you can. All right, in that case, Miss Heather, you with us?
Yes, I am.
B'chavod. Go right ahead. B'chavod.
Wa'al ekoshel bidvar halaha.
Okay, and right off the bat, we're seeing the importance of distinguishing between Hebrew letters, letters that sound similar but are different, right? So if I pronounce Aleph exactly the same as Ayin, if I don't have sufficient context, I might not know whether you're saying don't or whether you're saying about or for, right? This is Al, and this is Al. Here we have Wa'al, and here we have Wa'al. They're actually different words, completely different words. Right? Wa'al is a negation, usually future negation. So, and that not, or and shall not, I shall stumble in a matter, bidvar, in a matter, halacha, of halacha. So we're also asking God, again, that I shall not stumble in a matter of halacha. All right, next phrase. Heather, you can continue if you'd like.
Okay. Wa'ismehu bi havarai.
وَيِسْمَحُ, the, or the wa is and. The yud at the beginning is usually indicating the equivalent of like he will in English, right? And we have three persons in English. A lot of us may have learned this in elementary school, but we've forgotten what these terms mean, even though we use it every day. Can someone tell us what the difference between first, second, and third person means?
First person would be talking about yourself.
Or any group you're a part of, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
Second person would be referring about somebody else, right?
Who? Like
Um,
what other people? Anybody want to chime in? First, second, and third person.
it'd be talking to the other person, isn't it?
Yes. So it's referring to someone else other than yourself, but we still have two other types of categories of others. So as you said, if you're referring to second person, that means like your second point of reference, the people you're speaking to. There's a communication with them. All right. So first person is the speaker and any group that the speaker is together with. And then the second person refers to whomever you are speaking to. So then what does that leave third person?
Third person is like a narrative point of view.
Are
It's
you
outside
speaking
of
yeah, you're not talking to them, you're not talking about yourself, you're talking about a third party. Third person is the same as kind of like saying third party. It's another group. You're not speaking to them directly though. All right. So it's like saying he or she or they. So you're talking about them rather than to them. All right. So if you see this letter yud at the beginning of a word in Hebrew, which is very, very common, it means that number one, the word is a verb, it's an action. It lets you know it's not a noun, but an action. Number two, the yud is letting you know that it's not just a verb, not just an action, but it's an action that someone you're talking about is doing as opposed to yourself doing or someone you're speaking to doing. Right? It tells you it's masculine as well. And if the word ends with a vav at the end and a dot inside of it, an oo sound, that tells you that not only are you talking about someone else, but that they're plural. In English, that would be they, right? If you're talking about someone and it's plural, it's a group, then that's they. If you have the yod at the beginning, but no oo, then it would just be he, right? And then the root here is joy. So the yud lets us know it's an action. The action of joy is to be joyous or to rejoice. So and they shall rejoice, or yismahu, and they shall rejoice, be with me, haverai, my fellows, my comrades. Wa'al yikoshalu, wa'al yikoshalu, and may they not, haverai, my fellows, uh, stumble in a matter of halakha. So in the same way we prayed for ourselves to be protected from error in applying God's word, we also pray for the welfare of our fellows, that they too be protected from such mistakes. وَأَسْمَحْ بَهَمْ, and I shall rejoice with them. Can ye may it be his will. All right, did we stop on 120?
And that's where we'll start.
Right, so last week we stopped there. Okay. Rather, we stopped the previous one.
Yes.
All right, I see what you're saying. Okay. You don't have to be so exact. I'm just kidding. All right. Let's get someone who hasn't spoken yet. If any of our members are able, feel free to join with us. You can read the English as we go through 13 of the 613 commandments of God. Okay, well, since it's so competitive, we're going to get Mr. Victor. Mr. Victor.
Can you scroll in a smidge? Is that or is that going to
Zoom?
mess everything
You
up?
mean
Yes,
Zoom?
sir. Yes, sir.
Is that any better? You want it more?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Um,
Go ahead.
okay.
120. We're on
One-
the restrictive commandment number 120.
Not to allow the meat of the Thanksgiving offering to remain until the morning, as Leviticus 22:30 states. Do not leave over any of it until the morning. The same law applies to all other sacrifices. They should not be left over beyond the time allotted for their consumption.
All right, miswa haba'a. Next, miswa.
Not to break any of the bones of the paschal sacrifice, as Exodus chapter 12, verse 46 states, neither shall you break a bone of it.
Okay, these are very pertinent to the holiday coming up. If you
122.
if you want to be next, you can say ani haba. I am next. Ani haba.
Ani haba.
Right.
Not to break any of the bones of the second paschal sacrifice, as Numbers 9:12 states, neither shall you break a bone of it.
Okay. If you're female and you'd like to be next, you would say ani haba'a. Ani haba'a.
Ani haba'a. Not to remove the meat of the paschal sacrifice from the company in which it is being eaten, as Exodus chapter 12, verse 46 states, do not remove any of the meat from the house.
All right. So if you're a male, you want to say ani haba. If you're a female, you would say ani haba'a. Let's get someone else. Unless you guys simply are not going to be able to participate, feel free to text us in the chat box if that's the case. But don't be shy. All right, Mr. Victor. Victor Haba.
124.
All right.
Not,
Ani
not,
haba.
ani haba. Not to allow any of the remaining portions of the meal offerings to leaven. As Leviticus 6:12 states, it shall not be baked as leaven, their portion.
Okay.
Miswa,
Go ahead.
miswa haba'a.
Beautiful.
Not to eat the meat of the paschal sacrifice raw or boiled in water, as Exodus chapter 12, verse 9 states, do not eat from it raw or boiled in water.
All right. Yeah. Is that a Midwestern accent? I like that accent. Raw. I've heard that before, but I don't know what accent it is. And
I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so
oh,
I guess
okay,
Sounded
it's
that's
right
a
to
what it
me.
Pacific
is.
Northwest accent.
Okay, I didn't know that.
How's it said in Louisiana?
Raw.
Row.
Raw. You definitely hear that W.
Okay.
All
I
right, Miss
think I think it's
Wahaba.
I think it's in all the country and Louisiana. Okay. Mitzvah Haba'a
We are
126.
independent. Louisiana shall rise again. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Not to feed the meat of the Paschal sacrifice to a resident alien, as Exodus 12:45 states, no temporary resident, ger, or hired worker may eat from it. Is that a
All
ger?
right, let's distinguish between two major types of
Temporary.
let's distinguish between the two main types of an immigrant. We
Mhm.
have a resident immigrant, akin to what we have in the U.S. called uh, temporary residency, when someone is permitted by law to be a resident of the U.S., but it's not permanent per se. It might even be long term, but it's not permanent,
Like a work
right?
permit.
Could be like a work permit, but
Hmm.
that would be the hired worker here.
Hmm.
In the Torah, it's, a ger toshav is not necessarily a worker. It's for whatever the reason is, they're there and they're permitted to be there, but they don't have citizenship, what we would call citizenship. They're
Right.
not standing equal before the law with native Israelites. That's in contrast to a ger sledek. A ger sledek is a full convert, for lack of a better word. I think
Hmm.
immigrant is better actually. And the word tzedek means righteous. So a righteous immigrant is one who's fully embraced the the system of the faith of Israel, of the Torah of Israel. So this is not talking about a ger tzedek. It's explicitly referring to the resident immigrant, as opposed
Toshav.
correct, as opposed to the hager hagar. In the Bible, when you have a repetition of a root word, it usually is intending to intensify or amplify whatever it is being repeated. So, for example, you should certainly listen. If it says you should diligently listen or you should certainly take heed, in Hebrew, that's going to be the same root word repeated twice, right? Im shamu' tishme'u, same root word repeated twice. Similarly, hager hagar, it's giving emphasis on how that is a type of immigrant who's fully immigrated. He's like the act of immigration was as complete with him as possible, as opposed to the ger toshav, which is more of a temporary nature. So you got two types. One is permitted to live in the land of Israel, but they're not, the law does not apply to them equally as to a native born. But then you have a ger tzedek, a full immigrant for whom the Torah does apply to them equally as a native born. All right, misbah haba'ah. If you want to be next, now let's say tur sheli. Tur is turn, sheli is mine. Tur sheli.
Tur sheli. Not to feed the meat of the paschal sacrifice to an uncircumcised male, as Exodus chapter 12, verse 48 states, no uncircumcised person may eat of it.
All right, misbah haba'ah. Mr. Victor, tur shelcha, your turn.
Sorry, I was muted. Torsheli.
Okay.
Not to feed the meat of the paschal sacrifice to an apostate Jew, as Exodus 12:43 states, no outsider may eat from it. This refers to a Jew who has become assimilated among the Gentiles and serves false gods as they do. He must not partake of the paschal sacrifice.
Excellent. All right. So in the same way that a non-Israelite can join the people of Israel and become a member of the people of Israel, so also a Israelite from birth is able to change his status in certain regards with regard to how the Torah applies to him. So it's not exactly the same as you hear in modern Jewish pop culture. We should never confuse pop culture in the Jewish people with the authentic heritage of the Jewish people. Once a Jew, always a Jew, in the sense that they're always culpable to the Torah, in the sense that if they repent, it's not accepted in any of the historical streams of the Jewish people that they just keep the laws of Noah. If they repent, a native-born Israelite, they are required to take upon themselves again to renew their commitment to the Torah. And that's different from a non-Israelite who, if they were serving idolatry, although it'd be great if they wanted to join the people of Israel, they're not legally culpable for not doing so. Right? So that's the only difference. But with regard to how we, as members of the covenant, interact with an Israelite who abandoned the Torah, serves idols, we're not supposed to treat them just like any other Israelite. The Torah does make distinctions. Classical Jewish thoughts makes a clear distinction between Jews who are faithful to God's word and those who serve idols. Right? The same is true for non-Israelites. There are differences. All right, miswah haba'ah. Next commandment.
Tur shali.
For
For a person who became ritually impure, not to partake of consecrated foods, as Leviticus chapter 7, verse 20 states, and a soul who partakes of the meat of the peace sacrifice while he is impure.
miswah haba'ah.
Tur sheli,
Fair. Well,
not to
why do you say it like a question? Go ahead. Let's say it like a statement, right? Usually questions and statements are differentiated in Hebrew by inflection of the voice, how you set, like your tone. So let's say it like a statement.
Tur sheli,
There you go, right? You can just like in English, you can tell the difference.
not to partake of consecrated foods that have contracted ritual impurity, as Leviticus 7:19 states, meat that has touched any impurity shall not be eaten.
Mi haba batur. Who's next in turn? Mi haba batur.
Tur shali.
Beautiful.
Not to eat sacrificial meat that has remained past the limits allotted for its consumption, as Leviticus chapter 19, verse 1, who eats it shall bear his guilt. His soul will be punished by karet.
All right. Karet literally means excision, to be cut off. Right? The exact implications of that somewhat debated in the modern Jewish world, but historically it was understood as the most severe penalty and a penalty that's meted out by heaven, by God, right? And it can be understood, if you understand it that way, then the implication is that there's something beyond this world. So it would be at least a hint of the afterlife that we find in the Torah. Some other references are more than a little hint, but here we have a frequent hint. If you're going to be cut off, and it's a cutting off that is not something done by a court, and it's occurring even if you do something in private, that tells us that there's something beyond just the mere physical world as we perceive it here, in contrast to the what we know about the Samaritan view, that there was no, any beyond. All right, miswah haba'ah. Next commandment.
Tur sheli, 132, not to eat pigul, as Leviticus 7:18 states, it will not be accepted for him. Instead, it will be considered as pigul. Any person who eats it will bear his guilt. The sin is punishable by karet.
All right. So Pigul is a sacrificial offering that became unacceptable because of the intent of the person, or if it was eaten during a time or a circumstance that's not supposed to be eaten. So, and the literal meaning of pigul has to do with something that is, I'm not 100% sure of the literal meaning, but I'm suspecting it's related to the word pagum. So I don't want to elaborate too much, but I think it's related to a basic meaning that relates to a lot, deficient, a defect of some sort. I could be wrong about that literal meaning, but it's an offering that the time has passed. That's the most basic meaning for its eating. Okay, the final commandment for today.
Ani haba'ah. For an unauthorized person not to partake of the terumos, as Leviticus chapter 22, verse 10 states, no unauthorized person shall eat it.
Right, terumoth are offerings. Teruma is an offering. All right, so if we have three words for today in Hebrew from our reading, these 13 of the 613. What three words may they be? Right? Any three words in Hebrew.
Pascal?
Haskell, is that English?
It is.
All right, Hebrew words, Hebrew words. But go ahead, you put it out there. What does Pascal mean? Just for clarity.
The is it Passover or
Yeah, so Pascal is used
Pesach?
to refer to anything related to Passover offering. That's right. Or Passover. All right, now for Hebrew words. Three Hebrew words, even if you already knew it, but you heard it today in our reading of the 13 of the 613. And you guys
Karet.
want to write it down. If you don't yet know these terms, write them down. All right,
Karet.
karet. Karet. And what is karet then? Let's make sure to pronounce clearly the T at the end of words in Hebrew. Unlike English, if you see a T at the end of a word in Hebrew, we should be able to hear it. So who can tell us what karet means? Karet. Good. Someone wrote in the chat box, tameh and tahor. Excellent. All right, so let's get someone to define the word karet. After that, we'll go to the other two words.
To be cut off, excised.
That's right. That's right. Karet means cut off or excised. That's right. And the popular opinion you get today is that it means you will die a premature death. But we see in reality that that is not usually the case. That people who engage in acts that have a penalty of karet are not usually, dying prematurely, like much earlier than one would normally pass away. Which that means the reality that you see on the ground is that that is not likely the intent of the text. The other opinion is that, and this is an ancient opinion, is that it refers to being cut off from the world to come. Can anyone suggest why perhaps that opinion is less popular today? And the opinion, yeah, somebody wrote in the comments, maybe it means separation from the body, which that could go along with the idea of premature death, but everybody gets separated from the body, right? Whether you do one of those penalties, one of those transgressions that are penalized with karet or not. So why might it be that an opinion that karet just means dying prematurely would gain favor as opposed to the uh, older popular view that it means to lose your place in the world to come? Why might that? Someone clarified, cut off from the body of believers. Very good. And the connotation would be spiritually, right? Because you would get a penalty of karet even if nobody sees what you're doing. Okay, so it has to be something beyond corporal punishment in the human legal system. Why might the idea that karet just means premature death by divine intervention become a more popular opinion as opposed to the older view that it means being cut off from the world to come, i.e., cut off from the body of believers, of those who have a portion in the world to come? Why might that older opinion have fallen out of favor? There can be more than one opinion.
Sort of a desire to see the retribution in this lifetime.
You went the complete opposite way of what I was thinking. I suppose one could view it that way. One could view it that way. I'm not inclined to think that that's the reason, because just having lived among the Jewish people for more than 20 years, there's not a pervasive vindictive spirit. There's really not, despite all the hatred against the Jewish people. Like I think that that's one of the worst things about the Jewish people, is that they're not assertive enough, that they're not defensive and offensive when sometimes necessary, offensively defensive rather, not being offensive for the sake of itself. They're not enough of that. But yeah, you could view it as that way, maybe for some people, but I think more likely the idea that karet means losing your place in the world to come, having fallen out of favor, that interpretation falling out of favor is likely due to the rise of, for lack of a better word, racist spirituality or racist spiritism. Even I like that term. It sounds even more, kind of off the pale. Uh, and what I mean by that is there arose among parts of the Jewish people in the Middle Ages an idea that the Jewish people are inherently superior to the non-Jewish world. This is not a view that the majority of the Jewish people hold today, to be clear. It's not what the majority of Jewish people hold today, but it is an opinion that is held by, I don't know the exact percentage, but a noticeable percentage of the Orthodox religious establishment, right? And among them, there are those who officially, not just out of personal spite, but officially believe that even when somebody joins the people of Israel through legitimate conversion, which these same people accept, but they hold that even when a non-Jew joins the people of Israel officially in the proper way, in which case they're to be treated like Israel, but they hold that such a person is still inferior to a native born. And again, this is an idea that arose as far as evidence indicates, sometime in the Middle Ages, and it started to catch on with the spread of certain what nowadays people call Kabbalistic ideas. Not everybody who is into Kabbalah and into Jewish mysticism has this view. Again, it's important to make that clear. But it is an idea that exists in some Kabbalistic literature, and that has made this view more pervasive in certain parts of the Orthodox world. Because the Orthodox establishment is sort of viewed as the spokesman for traditional Judaism, so that has caused even non-Orthodox Jews who don't view converts and non-Jews as inherently inferior, who do not view them as inferior, it's caused them to accept this opinion, not knowing where it's coming from. Accept this opinion because this opinion was most popularly being put forward by the Orthodox establishment. But if you read more classical, the older Orthodox literature, classical Jewish literature, you'll see that this idea that karet just meant being dying prematurely was not the definitive opinion. There was a more pervasive opinion that it meant losing your place in the world to come. Why is that no longer popular? Because the popular opinion now is that all Israel have a place in the world to come. And this is understood as all Israel, as in someone who's born Jewish. Regardless of what they do, regardless of how they act, they're all going to have a place in the world to come. That's why I mean, I could be wrong, but it seems to me like that's the most likely reason that the older, pervasive Jewish view that karet meant losing your place in the world to come is no longer the mainstream view, because all Jews have a place in the world to come. So how could it be that karet means not having a part in the world to come? It's not possible.
Well, like you've said many times, keep reading
Correct.
Rambam,
Or not
and
just the Rambam, it's in the Mishnah. The idea that all Israel have a place in the world to come is in the Mishnah. But the
right.
very next line shows us that when it says all Israel has a place in the world to come, it means all Israel who are in proper association with Israel. Because the next line says, you want to finish it?
And these are those who have no place in the world to
And
come.
these are those of Israel who don't have a place in the world to come. It's in the Mishnah. This is not some hateful anti-Semitic text. This is classical Jewish literature.
It seems like something that if someone is cut off, everyone around them probably shouldn't be bothered by it or concerned about it, because it's like there's nothing you can do for or against. And how would they even know what that
You
you've
wouldn't
been cut off?
necessarily know. Wouldn't
So how do
necessarily
you act
know.
different? Yeah.
You would not necessarily know, but I do think, though, that uh, generally speaking, and this is with its weaknesses and imperfections, but generally speaking, humans have to operate in this world according to certain generalities. If we operated according to exceptions to the rule when we don't know that we should be, then we will be uh, going through red lights, in the middle of the night without thinking. If you see someone who looks extremely angry and dangerous, you'll just ignore it and let them play with your children. You have to go by generalities. Someone who looks really angry and suspicious, you probably shouldn't let them be playing with your children, right? And you might
Well,
not
that
want to be
those are
alone.
those we handle ourselves as a community.
So what I'm getting at is that there's certain generalities that are usually the case for people who've incurred karet. Karet,
Mhm.
as we will come to learn, I'll just go ahead and say it. Karet is never the penalty for a transgression of the Torah that occurs inadvertently or accidentally or due to ignorance. Karet is only with what we call someone who is over,
High-handed.
someone who is over b'mezid, someone who transgresses in order to anger God
Mm.
or audaciously, like defiantly before God, as you said, with a high-handed transgression. That's a fundamentally different type of transgression from somebody who violated the Torah either because they were just not being cautious enough or they didn't know the halacha very well. Uh, so mezid and yad ramah, which means to do something defiantly, it's not exactly the same as willful. Someone wrote willful in the chat box. It's not exactly the same as willful. When you do something uh, that's a Torah transgression, but you do it out of ignorance, the act may still have been willful, but you still don't get this most severe penalty. Also, our sages differentiate between someone who violates the Torah, b'mezid, that means in order to anger God, or bayad ramah, with a high hand, high-handedly. They differentiate this also uh, from someone who violates the Torah, not with a conscious intent to. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to remember where I was at. I saw a comment come up. So
My
our
bad.
sage, no, it's okay. I didn't have to read it, but I didn't want to miss something. Oh yeah. So our sages were clear to state as well that karet, this most severe penalty, does not apply to someone who willfully violates the Torah due to giving in to their yeser hara, to their calamitous or destructive inclination. If they're not doing it audaciously, defiantly, with in their words, in order to anger God. So there's a difference between someone who
Doing it out of
gives
weakness.
yeah, there's a difference between doing something out of weakness and doing something brazenly, right? And you would be able to tell a difference. For example, there's a difference between someone doing the same exact transgression willfully. There's a difference in the nature of that transgression before God, not before human courts, but before God, between whether he is going to do like Zimri uh, having relations with the Moabitess woman, right? And defiantly in front of everybody. How else did Pinhas know? Phineas, how did they say that in English? Pinhas? Oh, that was sorry. I don't know how to say this word in English.
Pinhas or Phineas, I guess.
Phineas. I
Yeah.
think that's Phineas. Um, where he stabbed them through, right? This is a narrative in the Hebrew in the Torah where there was widespread rampant transgression, but it wasn't just that they were giving in to their lusts in a moment of weakness, but the fact that they were doing it openly was of a completely different nature. So similarly, if someone has a weakness for bacon, they understand that it's forbidden, they believe in the Torah, and maybe they, generally speaking, love God. If in their moment of weakness they eat the bacon because they just simply broke, they just were not strong enough in their self-control or in their uh, commitment or in their faith to God. Just weren't strong enough. Not that they don't have any faith or love for God, but it wasn't enough to help them withstand the temptation. And so they ate some bacon. you can see that there's a fundamental difference in the nature of their doing that act between whether they do it with shame, with embarrassment. They're going to eat it when nobody sees, as opposed to somebody who will just be sitting in front of the synagogue, chowing down on a bacon ham cheeseburger, right at the entrance to the synagogue, knowing what they're doing, right? That those are two completely different natures, even though the act itself is the same penalty in the presence of a Jewish court. So that is karet in the
That's
historical.
profound, actually. I that totally makes sense, but I have to admit I've never looked at that, the weakness
So you will find in
angle.
the laws of repentance in the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam
Mhm.
clearly delineates between all of these. This is not for a human court. A human
Right.
court can't tell the ultimate, at the end of the day, yeah, the human court can't know with certainty what is in the heart of the man, right? So the human court goes by the cold legal structure of the
Wow.
human legal system. But God, the true judge, will judge according to the state of the heart.
So intent cannot be seen by man generally,
Correct.
but it is seen by God, and that's so when we have to have intent when we pray or bring an offering,
Correct.
and it may be placed on the altar down here at the temple, but it may not be accepted by Hashem.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. I keep
Mhm.
losing my thoughts. This is what I get
Sorry.
for not having enough sleep. No, it's not your fault. I didn't get enough sleep last night. What was I going to say? I apologize. So there's, oh well, maybe it'll come back to me if it's important enough. All right. So let's move on to, did anybody have any questions about the,
There was a couple of comments from that I put in the chat from that were in the Facebook that I moved over here. Don't know if there's anything that you want to address or look at.
let's pull it up. Those questions. Yeah. Well, some of them are pretty long. So if you don't mind.
One is basically is Correct being dying early, not being individual, but possibly by the community, allowing things to happen, and that the community just doesn't prosper is kind of what I was
That's
thinking
very
of.
nice. I like that idea, but it's not the plain meaning of the text.
Hmm.
Right? When it talks about karet, it clearly specifies in the text of the Torah that it's referring to the individual who does the transgression. But that's not to say that there's no truth in that statement. That makes sense. But that would be more like an inference that one could draw from the text, but it's not the plain meaning.
Like
Uh,
dying early, someone may die, and it's easy to say, "Oh, they should have lived longer,"
could
and
you
apply
imagine the
it.
judgmentalism that would
Oh,
fall on someone if that were true? You know, like
yeah,
that's not really
obviously they didn't make it to 120. Obviously, they did high-handed
right.
sin.
I remember what I was going to say now, and
Ah,
it's not as significant as I had wished, but I didn't remember at the moment. What I was getting at is that humans have to live by certain generalities. We become a bigot. You enter a state of bigotry when you continue to judge someone according to a generality, despite the fact that you're presented with facts that inform you that this particular person is not falling within that generality. Let's say, for example, that people who wear hoodies late at night and they're making no eye contact and just kind of loitering around an area, uh, that not that the majority are not going to be violent criminals, but that the likelihood is greater than someone who looks like they're a person who works every day, goes to the office. So the likelihood is greater. That's a fact. Same thing with men. Men are more likely to be violent criminals than women. But the moment you realize, that there's no supporting evidence for judgment XYZ in any scenario, not just the scenario. The moment you realize that this person, whoever it is not fitting into that generality in other ways, then if you continue to relate to them according to that generality, that's when you start to enter the realm of bigotry, right? So yes, let's say uh, Christians historically hated Jews. It's a fact. Historically, doesn't mean there were never exceptions. We're talking about generally. Today, Muslims generally hate Jews. It's a fact, right? The majority of Muslim society as a whole hates Jews. You're not a bigot to recognize that, even though some may, in their irrationality, claim that you are. But you do begin to enter the realm of bigotry when you meet a Muslim, for example, who, instead of denying uh, Jewish history and the suffering of the Jewish people, readily acknowledges it and is not in denial of the imperfections of the Muslim world, as many are. But if you meet a Muslim who acknowledges, despite the fact that he's still a Muslim, despite the fact that we don't agree with his beliefs and his like every opinion, but if he's acknowledging that there are problems in the Muslim world and there have been injustices done toward the Jewish people, if you continue to relate to that Muslim as if he's a terrorist just because he's a Muslim, you're entering into the realm of bigotry. Same thing in Christianity. If you meet a Catholic who, okay, they're associated with the Catholic Church, but if you see every indication that they don't agree with the bigotries that have occurred in the Catholic Church, and now you continue to treat them as if they do, now you are entering in the realm of bigotry, right? And uh, so how is that connected to the concept of karet? We were talking about like it's something that's private, so you may not even know. It's true, you may not know whether the person suffered karet or not, but there are generalities, right? There's something there are certain traits that if a person is acting so brazenly before God that they would incur spiritual excision and lose their place in the world to come, even though you can't know that definitively, objectively, but they're usually going to be character
You're going to see
character.
the signs of it. It's going to,
Yes.
yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we also are to distance ourselves from them.
There's
Otherwise, we may,
accompanying, there's behavior that accompanies someone
it's
like that.
troubling. Somebody
Yeah.
who acts
Not,
so
not,
brazenly before God,
not
I
proven,
don't want that.
but it's signs. Yeah.
I don't want them with my kids either, or with my
Hmm.
wife, or with me, you know?
Right.
What kind of person is that? It's one thing to eat a cheeseburger with bacon, high quality bacon, by the way, well seasoned.
Only the
It's
good
one thing.
stuff.
It's one thing to eat a cheeseburger, a bacon cheeseburger, because despite being mistaken, you're convinced that the Messiah came and now everything's permitted. Okay. It's one thing to eat a cheeseburger in that way. That person, despite their transgression of the words of the Torah, is not the same as a person who knows. And we don't know whether or not they know. We are not the judge of hearts. But assuming that they knew, that it truly is forbidden, it's against the will of God, that person who's eating the cheeseburger knowing that it's a violation of God's will, and they're doing it in spite against God because they hate God and they hate the Jewish people, that person is of a fundamentally different nature than the sincere Christian who eats a cheeseburger while having a warm family Sunday lunch with their kids and their wife. Right? They're both doing the same act that the Torah forbids, but the nature is fundamentally different. It's an important thing to remember. All right, but let's move on. It doesn't get talked about enough, that particular topic. Ms. Heather, are we on 29 or 30?
30.
Okay, so we are on proactive commandment number 30 in Sefer HaMitzvot, the book um, of the immutable commandments of the Torah. Have a volunteer. I can say Tur Sheli if you want to read. Tur Sheli, my turn.
Tur Sheli.
B'chavod.
That is that he commanded the priests to remove the ashes from off the altar every day, and this is what is called removing the ashes. And that is his, may he be blessed, saying, he shall put on other vestments and carry the ashes. And the laws of this commandment have already been explained in Tamid and Yoma.
I see Parashat Stab, and in the Mishneh Torah, see the laws for the daily offerings and additional offerings, chapter 2. Let's do one or two more if they're all short. Do we have another person? Mi Haba. Who is next? Mi Haba.
Ani haba.
Kol hakavod. 1231. Proactive
And that is
commandment.
that he, sorry,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
and that is that he commanded us to send away the impure from the camp. And that is his, may he be exalted, saying that they remove from the camp anyone with sa'arat or a discharge, Numbers 5:2.
All right, let's hold up for a moment. If you
So,
see in popular transliteration, common transliteration of Hebrew words into English letters, if you see a doubling, normally what that's going to mean is that there's either an aleph or an ayin between those vowels. So what you want to do is you want to make a sound of a break between those two A's. Right? That's in the popular way that people transliterate. They don't usually make the break, but it's transliterated that way to let you know that there should be. So if you see this, you would say sara'at or sara'at. All right, you would know it's one of those two. An sara'at.
Sara'at,
Yes,
or
sir.
a discharge, Numbers 5:2. And this camp is the camp of the divine presence, outside of which are the compartments of the courtyard, as we explained at the beginning of the order Ta'arot in the commentary on the Mishnah, and it is written in the Sifrei, Bamidbar 1:1, that they remove from the camp. This is a prohibition for the impure not to enter the temple while impure. And this command was already repeated with a different language. If anyone among you who has been rendered unclean by a nocturnal emission, he must leave the camp. Deuteronomy 23:11, meaning the camp of the divine presence. And the language of the Melchita is
Mechilta, mechilta.
Mechilta,
Right? All I's are usually indicative of an E sound. Right?
Mechilta.
Yeah, chil.
Instruct the Israelites that they remove from camp is a positive commandment. From where do we know that? It is a negative commandment. And they shall not defile the camp, Numbers 5:3. And the Sifrei, Devarim 255:4, he must leave the camp. That is a positive commandment. See Parashat Naso, Mishneh Torah, admission into the sanctuary 3.
All right, chapter 3. What do we find here that may be very enlightening to people, especially with regard to the efficacy of the Torah and common objections to the Torah, how cruel and well, what did we learn here that maybe is eye-opening to a lot of people if they would know it?
Well, for one thing, it who is going to be sleeping in the temple area that has a nocturnal emission? We're talking about priests here. Only
Right.
priests are going to have to leave because no one's going, and you can't even sit down in the
Also,
complex.
along the lines of
Much.
what you're saying is as well, the way it's normally translated outside of a historical Jewish context, without any resort to trying to understand the text from a historical Jewish understanding of the text, which is what most Christian translations do, you would read this and get the image that people are being kicked out of the community for a nocturnal emission, something that is relatively normal for males, you know, like especially if they're like really, really uber decent males, they're actually more likely to have this issue than if they're less decent males. uh, he who knows can figure it out. So, but if you're just reading this in a regular Christian translation, it sounds extremely harsh. So, because you had something happen to you that is just a part of normal human life, you're going to be kicked out of your community and you have to live in the desert all by yourself for some amount of time. It sounds extreme. No wonder so many Christians want to run away from the Torah. But when you understand the Torah in the context of how the people who were keeping the Torah and received it from the ancients who received it at Mount Sinai, when we understand the Torah in the way that they historically understood it, we learn that a lot of these most extreme uh, concepts taught in the Torah are not extreme. It's just that we're completely misunderstanding it. When the text says the camp, it's referring to the camp of the presence of God, the place of the dwelling of God. That's right. And it doesn't, in generally speaking, in the Hebrew Bible, when it says camp, it's not talking about in the modern English colloquial sense of, having a bonfire. That's not what it means. It means an encampment, a place of dwelling, but not a regular house, right? And that's the case with the temple, as our dear friend Hector here is showing us. Victor, we can't hear you, Victor.
Sorry about that. I wanted to show something. It's almost not picking up, but on the altar, you'll see the three brown areas. There's the large one, is where the offerings will be burnt. Right in front of it is where um, the for the incense would be. The coals for the incense would be gathered off that other small fire. The other one closest to the slaughter area back here is the one that's to keep the fire burning, the commandment to keep the fire burning. But in between them is the ash pile, which is probably not visible, especially a little, yeah, my camera, sorry. I wore a green shirt, so I can't put on my green screen and show this properly because I disappear. But anyway, the ashes are removed from the center of the altar, like we were talking about. One of the things I wanted to show that what that looks like, in the temple. In this area here there's no sitting, inside it, but in the corner buildings to the outside, away from the holy area, the priest would sleep. So uh,
But it's not an established house, which gives the connotation of the temporary encampment, right? It's the encampment of God's presence. So it's not that
yeah,
if a man experiences something completely normal
right,
and not unethical in the least, it means he's a healthy human. If he
right,
experiences that, it does not mean that according to the Torah, he has to be exiled from his community and dwell in the
yeah,
wilderness all by
right,
himself.
right, right. So the
It's
priest would have
ridiculous.
to actually, they go down underneath, and then they go out through a certain gate, and that's all
And they
they.
can still live in the city of
Of
Jerusalem,
course, of course,
right?
and they're back the next night, right? It's no
It
biggie.
suddenly makes so much more sense.
Yeah,
I remember reading this as a young boy, uh, who would go to like Baptist churches and stuff, and I remember reading this thinking, "Oh my gosh, like it was horrible. Thank God we
I'm
were saved from."
I'll never make it.
Yeah, and then you really do see how like you need to have the Torah replaced because it's so barbaric,
Hmm.
right? But it's not. And why would a good and loving God give a barbaric law for as an everlasting law, no less? It just flies in the face of reason. Yeah. This is the sort of thing that people really need to like stop and scratch their head when they see this. Could it really mean that? And if they really think that, then we also need to have more compassion for critics of the Bible and secular people, people who've left uh, faith, left, abandoned God because they just think it's crazy. They're not all doing it because it's out of spite. Some people, sure. Most people are doing it just because things seem too absurd, because they have because they're made in the image of God, they have an innate understanding that this is not just. And oftentimes they're leaving the church or leaving the synagogue not because they're rebelling against God, but because they're rebelling against, they think it's God because of the way God's being misrepresented, but they're rebelling against what they understand innately is unjust and absurd, and they can't have anything to do with it, and they don't know any other alternatives, so they just kind of wing life as a secular person. So it's a case in which we bear the guilt of the world, the religious establishment. And I say that not only for the Jewish people, but also for the religious establishments of Christianity and Islam. We have a shared burden and responsibility that the secularism in this world, I'm not excusing the atrocities done in the secular world, but we share a responsibility in the evils of the secular world. It would not have gained so much strength if we had offered uh, God's word as the reasonable source of life and instruction that it is. But instead, we've presented it as a mockery of basic reason. Right? So this is a part of our national repentance, that we need to present the Torah as a guide of reason for life, something that's reasonable, that makes sense, and stop presenting the Torah as a uh, something that only appeals to people who believe in fairy tales and gullibility. People will just believe anything. We don't want to be like that. Speaking of gullible children, Robert wrote in the comments a nice analogy for what we were trying to describe earlier. A very nice analogy. He says, with regard to the distinction between committing the same transgression but with different sorts of intents, he says, it's like this. It's like a story when a child takes a cookie from a cookie jar and didn't know that those cookies were specifically made for their father, right? If a child was told that it's for his father, but still takes the cookies, then he's different from a child who took the cookies because he just saw them on the counter and he didn't know any better, right? So if the child was told that the cookies were for his father, but he still takes them, um, then he's transgressing knowingly, but it's not as blatant uh, as it would be for a child who takes the cookies knowing it's for the child and does it in spite, right in front of the parents, right as they're telling them no, 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 but they're just doing it anyway, in an act of rage against their parents, or to get back at their parents for something. Right. So I think most parents can relate to the difference in the nature of that child and what consequences should be. That a just parent, a loving parent, would not relate to that child in the same way, even though he's doing the same act in each case. But a reasonable and loving parent would not give the same penalty or react the same to each child in each of those scenarios. How much more so our just and loving Father in heaven? So today is Hebrew. Do we have any questions about anything we've covered until we move on to Hebrew? Any question about anything? Mr. Victor, I have a feeling you're about to speak and it's on mute. I just knew it.
Maybe.
I saw I don't know what it was, but I saw the thoughts bubbling to the surface.
It was starting to smoke up here and around the ears. Yeah. No, I was thinking, I think for a long time I never equated worship to eating. Worship was singing, dancing, raise your hands, closing your eyes, whatever. Uh, but when we look at the temple service, and we were looking at these laws about eating the Passover, and they must be eaten, and this guy can't eat it, and these people shouldn't be eating it. They're not, they are this close to being part of Israel, but they're not. They
Right.
cannot partake. So, which is interesting. But the thing that jumped out was why eating? Why eating the offering? Why is that so big a thing? I don't know if that's catching you off guard, but yeah.
This is going to get into it, not as much as it would normally be, because it's not a hard and fast halacha. It's not a codified law, right? What you're asking about is something that relies on contemplation of a bigger picture. So why would eating be part of service of God? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, yeah. Like if you don't eat the Passover, you did not partake of the Passover.
Yeah.
It's that would be required. But if you bring a Thanksgiving offering of any other sort, I guess, and you're going to eating it is part of it. Like the sin offerings go to the Cohen, they have to eat it. They or if they can't get it done, I guess they burn it. But um, why is eating part of it? Why isn't it we just all burn on the offering given to
Could
Hashem?
be, and this is only speculation. When it comes to non-legal matters, we have to always distinguish it from the established law, right? Our speculation about the meaning behind the commandments it may be true. And different speculations or different opinions may be of different quality, even though you're not required to hold to any particular one, as long as it doesn't cause you to violate the hard and fast law. Um, so some opinions are more informed than others. I've not like done a tremendous amount of research in all the meanings behind all the sacrifices, but some. It could be that eating of the Passover sacrifice is a way of identifying with the idolatry. If we understand that the offering of the Passover sacrifice is in remembrance of the slaughtering of the lamb in Egypt, which was one of the deities of Egypt. So it could be that it's recognizing one that we have some sort of idolatry in our own lives, not just the Egyptians. So don't think it was just in Egypt that people were idolizing different things, but you also were. But in eating it, you're kind of like admitting to the fact that you have this within you, and at the same time, you're you're willing to kill that thing which you idolized and
Mm.
somehow incorporate that experience into your service of God. Meaning, when you did something bad in the past, uh, you don't have to live in denial of what you did, but you should grow from it and use it, turn it around, and in some sense, sanctify the negative things in your past by using them as a strength that you can draw from to teach other people uh, from your experience, how to avoid the mishaps you did or find some positive benefit as a consequence. So we turned around the act of idolatry that was occurring in Egypt and our killing of that idol, one of the gods of Egypt, and we've turned it into a celebration and a teaching experience with our kids, right?
Hmm. Sure.
And by eating it, also it maintains focus on the whole cause of the Exodus. That we
Yeah.
were able to do the Exodus by killing defiantly. Now, this was Bemezi. This was high-handed. We killed the god of the Egyptians in
That's
Egypt
true.
and spread. We didn't just kill it, and then we spread the blood all over the doorposts.
Yeah, yeah. We
That's
also we also ate it
defiance.
with we also ate it with our God. We had a feast with our God,
Yeah,
eating their God. So I know
yeah,
part of it is there's an obedience to rejoice and to bring everybody and eat before Hashem is a thing. And then there's the people that may have to eat it a different offering. Like there's the required feast or times where you come and eat before the Lord and rejoice is a
correct.
big part of it. But yeah,
And I keep
I
getting
just
thoughts and losing them. It's so
yeah, Victor
sleep is
starts
so
yapping.
important. No, I feel like more than normal. It's when I really
Robert wrote this. Let me
okay.
read what he wrote. When you wrong someone, fixing a meal for the one you wronged helps repair the relationship. You can also fix a meal to draw closer to one another. Eating can be considered one of the highest forms of worship, builds relationships.
Which is the basic meaning of the word most commonly translated as sacrifice doesn't literally mean sacrifice, even though it
No,
gets translated that way. And what word is that?
uh, well,
You got it?
I was going to
Korban.
Yes,
Corban.
yes, korban. So the most common word translated as sacrifice in the Hebrew Bible is korban, and it doesn't literally, on an etymological level, the development and origin of the word doesn't have anything to do with killing something. It's from the root word for to draw near,
Offer.
karev,
Yeah.
kirva, kiruv. Yep. And this is true also in Arabic. It's an ancient concept. It's an ancient concept. Um, You also, when you look at the different choice in words for the different types of sacrifices, I'm inclined to think that the different kinds of animals or different sorts of terms used for the different articles associated with the sacrifices are not random. Um, I don't know that it's always obvious what they mean, and there's some things are more clear or more, let's say, some sorts of speculations I think are more tied or more demonstrable, more given to or more convincing than others. So there are some details in the sacrifices, in the word, in the language used to describe them in Hebrew, that may be more obvious what the meaning probably is, like the deeper meaning, the symbolic meaning, than for other terms. But you can still speculate, and I think the more you read into it, the more meaningful it becomes. So I'm going to give you a few examples, just a few examples. All right. I'll type it in the chat box and you guys can write it down if you want. So one, let's take the word to boil or to cook. All right. Bashel. This is simple. So bishul, bashel, this root word for cooking. It's also a Hebrew word that means because. I'm going to give you another one. Let me transliterate this for you. Bashel, bishul. All right. Le, bashel. That means to cook. So this root word for cooking, historically, well, scholars think historically it was cooking by boiling is what it meant. In modern day, not only in modern day Hebrew, but also already in Mishnaic Hebrew, we know at least by the Mishnaic period it was being used in some dialects of Hebrew to mean cooking in general. The scholars tend to think it was originally boiling, but my point is that it might refer to boiling, but this could be a hint at a meaning in connection to the other words surrounding it for something because of something else. Why? Because beshel is also a Hebrew word that means because, right? And now I'm going to give you a few other terms in connection to sacrifices that could kind of open your eyes to give you a more informed type of speculation, right? Not all speculations are on the same playing level. So keves, right? Keves is a sheep, but it also means what? To clean. Le, the le, when you put le in a transliteration, it means to, like a verb, or like to setting up an action, like to run, to eat. So le kaves, kaves is to clean, to launder.
What's a kevish? That's
That's a
is that
ramp.
related?
That's
Yeah.
a ramp. But when you think about the fact that the letter sin and the letter shin are the same letter, and sometimes they interchange, that can also be an opening to a potential deeper meaning to something, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to go on a rabbit chase. Is that what they say?
I don't know. The
Go
the
down a
the
rabbit
sheep
hole.
the
I don't
sheep
want to
is
go.
when the morning offering is laid
Let me
on the kevish before it's
let me
brought
give
up
you another
later.
one.
Yeah.
Let me give you another one. It says in the Torah often where we derive uh, places and instances that we're supposed to immerse in the mikveh, in a ritual pool of water. It doesn't explicitly say that in the text. It usually says you shall wash your clothes. Now, the word wash there uh, is related to the word for sheep, right? It's just a little too uncanny, its proximity to certain things. But then the word for your clothes, there's more than one Hebrew word for clothes. There's the word malbush or livush. Livush. I don't want. So you could translate malbush, Malbush. You could do it that way, but a regular English speaker who would read that would think malbush, malbush, because bush is a word in English, bush. So it's an example of how you have to think about how people are going to read it. Bush, clothing. But there's another word for clothing, beged, beged, clothing, right? When it says that you should wash your garments, you should wash your clothing in the book of Leviticus, for example, it uses the word beged instead of the word levush. Why? Why the word choice? Livgod, livgod. So again, the le means to. So livgod or be good means, uh, um, how do you say, to cheat, but not cheat like on a test. It's like infidelity. That's the better word. Bigida, bigud is infidelity. So you're washing your infidelity. See what I'm saying? It's not that you're washing your clothes per se, but the word choice, what word was chosen to refer to your clothes there, might not just be random, that it just randomly chose the word uh begadim instead of the word malbush, right? There's synonyms in Hebrew, but why did it choose one over the other? It happens to be that it chose the term that is the same root letters as the word for infidelity, infidelity before God, right? So we're washing away our unfaithfulness to God. That shows you a deeper meaning behind the words and in greater depth than a lot of these rituals that otherwise, if you don't look at the word choices in the original language, you might otherwise think it just seems kind of arbitrary or like not very deep of an action. So thought we could go ahead and do a prep for Purim. And it's not all we're going to cover, but we're just going to go through it quickly. Hebrew words for Purim. Do we have any volunteers? We're just going to read it and read the Hebrew and then say the translation. Right? And this is for everyone, whether you can read with somewhat confidence or if you're not confident to read at all. Right? I want everybody to speak up. Just say Tur Shali, my turn, if you want to take a chance and give it what you got. And we'll help you walk through it. If you don't even know the Hebrew letters, we'll walk you through it. You especially, whoever you are, especially should speak up. But we have someone now. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Tur Shalim, is that how you say Tur Shalim?
That's right. Tur with an R. Tur Shali.
Tur
My turn.
Shalim.
Yes, sir.
It's Hamelech.
Excellent. Would you mind spelling it for us? We're going from right to left. So you're acting as the teacher now. Tell us the letter
Okay.
and then tell us the name of the vowel under it and then pronounce them together.
Gosh, you can
I'll give you an example.
I
I'll give you an
don't
example.
think.
All right, I'm going to
Yeah.
give you guys an example of what I'm going to want you guys to be doing. So first you read it, so you know how to read, but we're going to break it down for anyone at a less advanced level of reading. So what you would say is hey. The first letter is hey, right? Plus patah. That's telling you the name of the vowel under it. Patah. So hey plus patah is ha. Next letter is mim. The letter mim, it makes an M sound. Plus segol, the name of the vowel under it is segol. Mim plus segol is me. So ha, me. Lamed plus segol is le. The sound of segol, this vowel, is e. Segol. The first vowel sound in the name of a vowel is the sound that it makes. So segol vowel makes e. Hölam vowel makes o. Hirik vowel makes e. Lamed, this letter is the L in Hebrew, plus segol is le. Ha, me, le. Then we have chaf sofit. Chaf makes a chaf sound, so lamed with segol and chaf is lech. Ha, me, lech. Right, so we're just breaking down the syllables. Hamelech, the king. You want to do it? Even just one or two of the letters. Show us that you understood.
Okay. So it's hit,
Hey, hey,
hey, and
hey with a patah.
hatab. Yeah, hatab or hatab. Can't
Patah.
remember.
P is in pickle. P is in Peter.
Oh,
Patah.
patam.
There you go.
Patach. There you
That's
go.
it. That's it. So hey plus patah, what does it make?
It means the,
And what
or
sound does it make? What sound does it make?
it makes the ha, the ah sound, the
That's right.
an a sound.
H-A, right. H-A.
Ha.
All right. And
Yes.
then this letter, what is the name of this letter?
It's mem, or
Excellent.
for m.
Plus the vowel. What vowel is
The
this? The
vowel
name?
was segol.
That's right.
Segol, is it?
Segol. Accent the first syllable. Segol.
Segol. It makes the s sound like e. No,
X
yeah, like a
like
sound.
EH or elephant.
Eh. Yeah.
So mem plus the letter mem plus the vowel segol equals.
Me.
That's right. Excellent. So mem with a segol is me. Now let's put these two together. He with a patah ha. Mem with a segol me. Ha me.
Me. Yeah.
All right. We're just teaching people how to read. Go ahead. Next letter.
Lamed.
Lamed is the name of this letter with a
And with the segol, and it makes the
le.
le sound. Yeah.
All right. So let's put these three syllables together. Blank, blank, blank.
Ha me le.
Excellent. Now, final letter of what letter is this?
That is the het Sophie.
Ha.
Het Sophie.
It's like a really raspy sound.
Het Sophie.
That's right. And it has no vowel.
Final het. Final
Final
het is it?
ha. Final
Ha.
ha.
Final ha. There you go.
All right. The name of this letter is ha.
Which
All
is like, yeah. Is it like
That's
a
right.
CH sort of thing?
It's sort of like, well, in German, it would be a CH. Ashkenazi Jews use a CH to represent it. I'm not a big fan. But they do that because Ashkenazi Jews inherited Yiddish, and
Yeah.
Yiddish is German, is basically German with a lot of Hebrew influence. But in academia, in the English-speaking world, outside of the Ashkenazi world, the ch sound is usually represented with a KH or a K with a line under it. It doesn't matter how you
Okay.
write it, as long as you know how to make the sound. You're just
Okay.
causing friction in the back of your mouth with the roof of your mouth and the back of your tongue. So, so lamed with a segol, with a ha is le.
Le.
Ha me le.
Le. Yep.
All right.
Cool.
Everybody,
you.
make sure you're writing down the name of the letters and the name of the vowels if you did not already know. All right. Toda rabah. Thank you very much, Habibi. Mi haba. Who's next? Excuse me.
Ani haba.
Kol hakavod. All right. Go ahead. You can say the word right off the bat if you can read it. And if not, then you're going to break it down as we just did last time.
Hamelecha.
One more time. Do it slowly. Let's go slowly.
Hamelecha.
All right. So if there's a kaf, that's the correct letter, what you did here. But if there's a kaf, a letter kaf with a dot in it, then it's going to be a K like a regular K in English. All right. So let's do it one more time. And this vowel under the mem is a pa.
Sure.
Let's read it one more time. Go ahead.
Hamalcha.
All right. K like a kite. Amalka. Amalka. All right, now let's break it down. Go ahead and tell us the name of the letter, the name of the vowel. We're going from right to left, everybody.
All right. Letter He with a patah. Ha.
Patah. Accent the first syllable in the names of vowels. Patah.
Patah.
That's right. So hey with a patah, what sound does it make?
Ha.
Excellent. Next letter. What letter is this?
Mem.
Correct. Mem makes an M sound like mother. Mem with a, what's the name of the
Patah.
vowel? That's right.
Patah.
Mem plus patah is what?
Ma.
Excellent. Let's put these two together, two syllables together. Blank, blank.
Hama.
Hama. That's right.
Hama.
Excellent. All right. This
Lamed.
letter. Correct. And what sound does lamed make?
L. La.
That's right.
Like
It's an L sound. Lamed. And what's this underneath it?
2 dots.
2 dots. The name of it is shwa.
Shwa.
Or shava in modern pronunciation. There are 2 types of shava, so this is maybe the most tricky of all the vowels. There are 2 types of shava, so let's write that down if you did not know it. So you're going to write any letter in Hebrew that you know, you can write it down and then put 2 dots under it. And then you're going to write equals. Equals S-H-W-A, shwa, or shava, whatever you prefer. Shwa is the more historical Hebrew pronunciation. All right, so the 2 dots under a letter, the name of it is shwa, and what it means is that this is not, the letter that is under does not belong to the same syllable as the next letter. Okay, it's going to be either its own little syllable, shava indicates that the letter it's under either is its own little unaccented syllable, or it belongs to the previous syllable. It's a part of the previous syllable. Okay, so we have two types of shava. I'm going to give you a name for them. Two types of shava. You're going to put 1 and 2 on your piece of paper if you have paper. On one line, put shava type or type of shava number 1. That will be called sounded shava. It's a shava that represents a sound. When it is sounded, it represents a short, unaccented, unemphasized eh sound, just a short little eh. So it's going to be a short eh as opposed to eh, just a quick little unemphasized eh. That is the sound of shua. Number 2, on a second line, you're going to put silent shua. When it's a silent shua, all it's telling you is that the letter it's underneath should not be joined to the next letter in the word. That means they are not the same syllable. Instead, if it is a silent shua, unlike the sounded shua, which makes the shua represent a short e vowel, the silent shua does not represent any vowel. That's why we say it's silent. It's not representing a sound. All it's doing is telling you that the letter it's under belongs to the same syllable as the previous letter. That means, for example, this L, this lamed letter, is part of the same syllable as the mem. It would be mal, mal. That's one syllable, one part of a word, mal, mal.
So is this example a silent?
Yes, yes. And also, I want everybody to write down that when you're unsure, because it takes a bit of time to learn how to recognize whether a schwa is sounded or silent. You can't just see it and know. There are some publications of Hebrew vowelized text that do indicate the difference. Visually, you can see the difference between a sounded and silent schwa, but that's not the majority of vowelized text. And that's relatively recent innovation, like in our generation that was innovated. And I think it's a good thing. But in most vowelized texts, still today, there's no way you can know whether it's sounded or silent unless you know certain indicators to look for that are not indicated in the 2 dots themselves. And we can't get into that right now. It's too much, right? But suffice it to say, there are 2 types of shava, sounded and silent. So I'm going to ask a question. Anybody who wants to respond, go ahead and answer. What are the 2 types of shava? Nah, Victor, you can speak up if you see nobody's answering. What are the 2 types of shava? Let's give them a few moments.
That's what that meant. I'll be quiet for a minute.
There are 2 types of shava. What are they called? Right? You don't have to be an expert in what they do. Just what are they called? 2 types of shava.
Is it short and long?
All right. So if you wrote down short and long, let's X that. I can understand why you might say short. One of the sounds of shava is a short, unemphasized vowel in e. Just a quick, unaccented vowel, e. But that's only one of them. The other is not long, it's not short, it's nothing. Right? So you want to write down that the 2 types of shava are sounded shava and silent shava. Right, so not short and long, but short and silent. One is a short sounded vowel. By short, we just mean unaccented. And the other is silent. Now, I'm going to give you another point to write down. When in doubt, because there's no way you can tell which it is unless you already know Hebrew or you've learned certain principles that we don't have time. You guys will all fall asleep if I try to teach it to you, right? So when in doubt, if you don't yet know for sure which one it is, whether it is silent or sounded, assume that it's silent. Treat it as if it does not make a vowel sound, if you're unsure. So make sure you write that down. That's very helpful to know. If you see a schwa and you're not sure whether it should be pronounced as a short vowel e or no vowel at all, assume it makes no vowel.
To the Jewish person who hears it, they'll know what you're talking about.
Yes. Just like in English, uh, the average native speaker does not speak proper literary English when we're speaking,
Hmm.
right? We do not write. If you're writing a professional letter or a resume, you don't write the way that you speak. So in the same way in English that we have certain technically they're mistakes that we make when we speak grammatically, but because they're mistakes that all or most native English speakers make, they're kind of accepted, right? Like saying, I want to go. Do you want to go? What you want to do today? If if I say want to go, it's not technically grammatically correct, but it's a mistake that's colloquial, it's accepted, right? If I'm a non-native English speaker and I start trying to learn English, that means that my mistake as a non-native English speaker by turning every th sound into a t, even if maybe they understand me, but it's not the same as making the mistake of saying I wanna instead of I want to. Right? They're not the same. They're both mistakes, but one is an accepted mistake among native speakers, and the other, if I say I thank you very much instead of much, that is not an accepted mistake. You can't do that if you want to like be a normal part of society. Same thing in Hebrew. There are mistakes that a non-native Hebrew speaker will make that you can't do it. Some of those, if you make those kinds of mistakes, you won't be understood. Other types of mistakes, you might be understood, but it's going to be distracting and weird, and you don't want to be that way. And then there are other types of mistakes that you can make that is perfectly acceptable because native speakers also make those mistakes, right? So pronouncing a silent Shava, pronouncing it as a sounded Shava is a mistake you don't want to make among native speakers. And the reverse is also true. If you make a sounded Shava silent, it's acceptable. Why is it acceptable? Because, there's no rhyme or reason to it other than it's acceptable because so many people do it, it doesn't make you sound weird. You're more immediately understood and you still sound normal. You sound natural, normal, right? So that's an accepted mistake to make a sounded Shava silent. But the
The
opposite is not
opposite
true.
may not be true. Okay. All
All
right.
right.
So
You might be
if you
understood, but
shorten it,
it's
yeah,
gonna be jarring to the ear of a Hebrew
that
speaker.
makes sense. Makes sense.
And it's the same in every language. They're just different quirks, but you have different types of mistakes. All right. So one more time, I'm going to ask a question. If you see a Shava, and that is the symbol in Hebrew that is underneath letters and it looks like a colon, looks like two little dots, one on top of the other. If you see that and you don't know whether it should be pronounced as a short et or whether it should be completely silent, and that's the only two types of Shava, right? Basically, what should you assume if you're not sure? What should you assume about that Shava?
Silent.
Yes, that's right. Assume it's silent. That does not mean the letter it's under is silent. It means that the symbol of the Shava is silent. The symbol of the Shava, which sometimes acts as a short vowel, right? So let's not confuse the Shava symbol for the sound of the consonant letter that it's under, right? So even when it's a silent Shava, the consonant sound of the letter it's under is still pronounced, but it's pronounced without a vowel following it, right? The Shava, when it is pronounced, symbolizes the vowel that would follow it. But we will make it silent if we don't know any better. All right. So, Mr. Victor, how would we read this, knowing what we know now?
Hamalka,
Perfect. Perfect. Hamalka. Hamalka. And what does it mean?
the queen.
That's right. The ha means the, malka is queen. So it's like you took the word, gotta go back, but it's not going back. It's like you took the word melech and you added a hey to it, and that made the masculine word melech, king, become feminine by adding the hey. All right, mila haba'a. Everybody say mila haba'a. Next word, mila haba'a. I at least want to hear Mr. Victor or Heather. Come on, you guys. Makore.
Milah haba'ah.
That's right. What is milah?
Milah is word.
That's right. It's a word. Not a spoken word in the sense of like word got around that she's in town, right? Milah is only a written word. Or circumcision. Same word for circumcision. Okay, milah haba'ah. Mi haba. Who's next?
Ani haba'ah.
All right, you're gonna read it, tell us what it means, and then break it down. Tell us the name of the letter and the vowel it's under, and construct it.
Malhuth.
Say it one more
Kingdom.
time. That's right.
Malhuth.
Yes, perfect, perfect.
Kingdom or kingship.
Excellent. And you can see the word king again inside the word, because Hebrew works on a three-letter root system. Anytime you see an MLK, a mem lamed chaf, you can assume it has something to do with kingship or rulership. That's how Hebrew functions for everything. Like a dining room and the word for the act of eating and the word for feed, for food and to feed. All of these words in Hebrew, you can see that they're connected. The meanings are connected in contrast to English, where like restaurant and food and eat and feed all sound different, right? In Hebrew, you can tell that they're similar. All right, let's break this word down, Heather.
Mem.
Starting from the right, going to the left.
Mem patach.
Right. So let's say mem. Let's say mem with a patah.
Mem with a patach. Ma.
That's right. Okay.
Lamed with a shawah. Ooh.
Good. And why did you do that?
Because
why did you make the shava silent? You didn't make it a le. Why is it not a le?
Because when you don't know, you should opt for
That's right.
being silent.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to give you guys one way that you can know. Only one for today. If the letter that's on top of the shava has a dot inside of it, you can be certain that it is a sounded shava. So if this lamed letter had a little dot inside it, the same way this letter has a dot inside it, then you would know that instead of mal, it's male, male. Not male, but male. Right? When the shava is sounded, if it is sounded, it will be an unaccented vowel, a short e. But there's no dot in it, and we don't know any better, so we're going to make it silent. Mal. All right. Oth haba'ah. Next oth. Next letter.
Ha.
Chaf. Tell us the name of the letter and then the vowel that it has.
It would be the letter next to it, which
Okay.
I'm drawing a blank on the name of.
All right. So this is the letter chaf, and the next one next to it is the vowel. It is called shuruk. Shuruk. You can spell that SHEWREWQ. I'll write it in the chat box. There's more than one way to skin a cat with transliterating Hebrew. So you have to choose which is working best for you to properly pronounce the words. Normally you would see this vowel, which makes an oo sound, transliterated like this, right? My objection to that is that the average English speaker, I entered it in the chat box. I spelled it SHURUK. That's how you're normally going to see it transliterated. I'm not a fan of it unless a person's advanced in Hebrew already to some extent, and he just doesn't have the ability to type in Hebrew or something like that. He could use this. But if you use this kind of transliteration for someone who's just beginning to learn Hebrew, they're more likely to read this as shoruk, shuruk, or sharuk instead of shuruk. So you need to transliterate in a way that you will know how to read it. Shuruk. Or maybe shuruk. Right? There's more than one option. Shuruk is the name of it, and it makes an oo sound. So chaf is the letter. Go ahead, Heather. You can tell us the name of the letter and then the vowel that it has. Anytime you see a vav with a dot in the middle, it makes an oo sound and no consonant sound.
So ha with a shuruk.
That's right. Put it together.
Who.
That's right. So now let's put the previous syllables with that together from right to left.
Malhu.
Excellent. And the final letter?
Tho.
That's right. Tho. In modern Hebrew, they would just say this is tab. All right. So we're going to add that to the previous syllable because it has no vowel. There's no vowel here. So that means it belongs to the vowel that was preceding it. So hu we had, now we're just going to add a T. Chut. In biblical Hebrew, chuth. In biblical Hebrew or classical Hebrew, when the letter tav, this letter I'm circling, when the letter tav has a dot in it, then it's a T like the word turtle. But if there's no dot in it, it's a TH like think or throw. Ashkenazi Jews of European or Eastern European heritage will pronounce this as an S sound, like snake or snack. Most Middle Eastern Jews nowadays, and in modern Hebrew, they just pronounce this like a T. But that's not classical Hebrew, nor is it the traditional Hebrew of the major Jewish communities in the Middle East. It's modern Hebrew, everybody should know, intentionally simplified pronunciation to make it more easy to learn Hebrew to quickly learn how to communicate with other Jews. But that should not be thought of as a replacement of classical Hebrew. All right, milah haba'ah. Everybody say milah haba'ah.
Milah haba'ah.
Beautiful. Next word, milah haba'ah. Mi haba, who's next? Mi haba. If you want to be next, say ani haba. Or tur sheli, my turn. Tur sheli. Mi haba. Mi haba batur.
Well, I could try this.
Go right ahead. You
No,
can do it. Go ahead.
okay. What was it? Meet haba that I need to say? I can't remember.
So ani means me or I.
Ani.
Ani
Okay.
and then haba is next, masculine.
Ani.
So ani haba.
Okay. Ani haba. All right.
Go ahead. Run from right to
It
left.
is Malkuto.
Good. Good. All right. Only little thing here, there's no dot in the chaf.
Oh,
If
Malkuto.
yes, yes. All right. That's perfect. For modern Hebrew, that's perfect. Malchuto. In biblical Hebrew, because the tav has no dot, it would be a th like think or throw. If you cannot
Okay.
make a th sound, which if you have teeth and a tongue, you can. It might just take practice, but you can. If for whatever reason it's too difficult, it's not the end of the world. You will be understood. Why? Because that's a mistake that almost everybody makes. That's normal for modern Hebrew. Malchuto. All right. And what does it mean?
Malkuto. His kingdom.
That's right. All right. And where do we see king in this?
Malech.
Right. The first three letters is the root, and we see kingship or something regarding a king. The ut suffix, as we saw in the previous, ut, think of this suffix added to words in Hebrew, similar to use of like S, like ESS, like His Highness, or think of it as like a ship, like in kingship or rulership or guardianship, or like ism, like in Judaism or uh, Buddhism. That's the way this ut is functions in Hebrew. You add it to nouns to make it something like a ship or an ism or a ness, like
Okay.
kindness. Okay. So we see in the English it's his kingdom. Where is the his in all this mess? Where is his?
Uh,
We learned that
oh,
Malchut is
oh,
kingdom. So what's left?
Uto.
Well, the ut is part of Malchut, right?
Oh, Malchut.
Malchut
Yes.
already means kingdom. So
Oh,
where do we see the his?
I guess the O at the end.
Yes. So that's how you say his in Hebrew. Add an o at the end of the noun. That means that the syntax of Hebrew, at least with regard to this, but if you can keep a secret, it's almost everything, is the opposite of
It's
English. Almost everything's the opposite of English. That's why it's so confusing to English speakers, especially. So whereas in English we put the pronoun, the possessive pronoun his, before the object that's possessed, right? Always.
Mhm.
So in Hebrew, it's the exact opposite. You would say the thing which is possessed first, and then immediately after it, you would say who is possessing it. Okay.
Okay.
Anytime you have a noun, if you add an o at the end, you make it his, whatever the noun is. All right, milah haba'a. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Any questions? You guys are doing great. I see
Well, this is
someone like
great.
my. Go ahead.
So this is great. Um,
Borok taşı.
yeah.
I see someone likes the comment I made. If you have teeth in a tongue, you can produce the TH sound, and that's true. It might not be easy at first, but you can. A lot of the difficult sounds of Hebrew, anyone who has all the normal pieces of their mouth structure can make those sounds. It just might take some practice and some explanation. Not everybody's good at explaining how to produce those sounds. If you don't have a regular working tongue, or if you don't have front teeth, it might be that you legitimately can't make those sounds, right? And nothing to feel bad about that. But who should feel bad is someone who wants to learn the Hebrew Bible, wants to learn Hebrew, but is not willing to put in a little bit of effort to learn how to produce those sounds. But we are not counted among those, so let's get back to work, right? Yalla, bo'u namshich. We are not lazy folk. Bo'u namshich. Who can tell us what bo namshich means? Bo namshich.
Bo next. Is it Bo? I think Bo is
Bo's
go
come,
or come.
come,
There we go.
right? And then namshich is we shall continue. I'm going to write it in the chat box if you want to write it down. It's a phrase, a term I use a lot in lessons. Bo equals come. Bo is come. It's a command form. Come. Namshich means we shall continue. The in prefix means we shall.
Yeah, I think 2 parashats ago, that was the name of the parasha. Parasha Bo.
Parashat Bo, that's right.
Yeah.
Literally. Bo namshich literally means come, we shall continue. I.e., in English, you'd say, let's continue. So how do we say let's continue in Hebrew? If you look in the chat box, you got the answer. How do you say let's continue in Hebrew? Anyone? The answer's there, the last message in the chat box.
Bo Manshik.
Yes, perfect. That's how you say let's continue. Bo namshich, milah haba'a. Next word, milah haba'a. Mi haba batur. Who's next? Mi haba batur. Mi means who. Just to add confusion, if you guys want something funny to say to your friends about Hebrew, me in Hebrew is who. Who in Hebrew means he. He in Hebrew means she. And there are other weird things. All right, so who is me? Me is ani. Yalla, mi haba. Who's next?
Ani haba'a.
Kol hakavod. Tur shalach. Your turn. Tur shalach.
Matanos.
Beautiful. Matanoth. Matanoth. All right, let's break it down. What does it mean first?
Gifts.
Mitsuyan. Excellent. Mitsuyan. All right, let's break it apart.
Mem with patach. Ma.
Excellent.
Thaw with commas. Thaw.
Good. So let's put those together. Mm-hmm.
Ma. Thaw.
Mata. There's a
Mata.
dot in the tav,
Right.
so it's
Yes.
going to be a T like turtle. Mata.
Mata. Noon with holam.
Perfect. If you see the letter vav with the dot over it, it does not make a consonant V or W sound. Instead, it's just serving as a placeholder for the vowel O. So the vav with an dot on it is an O. And make sure you say O without a strong W sound at the end. If you say O, you will be understood, but you'll have a very, very thick accent. Very thick accent. So O instead of O. All right. So nun with the hulam is
No.
perfect. No and not no, right? No. All right, let's put them together.
Ma, ta, no.
No?
No.
Let's do it again.
Mata,
Let's do it.
no.
Yes, mata no. All right, next letter.
Fall.
Thal. That's right, thal. How do we know it's a TH like think and not a T like turtle?
Because there's no dagesh, no dot in the middle.
That's right. In modern Hebrew, it would be pronounced like a T in turtle because modern Hebrew simplified pronunciation. All right, so let's read the whole thing all together.
Matanos.
Mitsuyan, matanoth. That is gifts. What do we say for next word?
Milah haba'ah.
Beautiful. Why are we saying milah haba'ah for next word instead of milah haba?
Because milah is feminine, not
That's right.
masculine.
That's right. How do you know? How do you know it's feminine?
Because of the ah on the end.
That's right. Almost every word in Hebrew that ends with an ah sound at the end is feminine. If you know how to spell it and you know it's spelled with an H or the letter hey at the end, and there's no vowel under that hey, you can know 100% sure that's a feminine word. Excellent. All right. So milah haba'ah, next word. Does anyone have any questions regarding what we've covered so far? All right, in that case, bo'u namshich. Let's continue. These are words related to Purim coming up soon. So it's useful to work on these words as we draw near to Purim. If you listen to lectures, Jewish lectures on the holiday, you're very likely to hear some of these words. Milah haba'ah. Mi haba. Who's next? Mi haba. Hector. Mr. Victor.
He said he was going to have to step away for a moment. I'm not sure if he's
Sababa.
back yet.
No, Nora, no biggie. Do we have any volunteer for the next word?
Ani haba.
Kol hakavod. Kol hakavod means like good job, excellent.
Okay.
All the respect. Kol hakavod.
I'm reading. 1 second. Is this Sanayom or Aniyom?
All right, you're
Aniyom?
very close. The second one was closer. So you got the first part. Go ahead and just break it down.
I believe that is Ain, the
Yes.
letter.
Ayin with a, I
Well,
know
we
it's
have a
tricky.
Shiva, and then we have what do we call that one? Kametz,
Pata, pata.
Patag.
All right, so the flat line is a pata and the two dots are a shwa. And everybody write
Sure.
down, everyone write down shwa. You want to put, it's useful when you're translating English letters. It's useful to use the accent symbols in Spanish. So when you write schwa, you're going to write an SH. Oh, it says my internet is not stable. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you broke down a little bit, but we can hear you.
Okay, let someone text me, Heather or Victor, if I completely go away, because I might
Yeah.
be talking and not realize it.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
All right. What are we talking about? Okay, so ayin makes an ah sound. Patar is the vowel that's flat here, like a little flat line, makes an ah. And the two dots, shwa, mean either that there's no vowel or that it's an unaccented vowel. That tells us that even though there's a patah vowel here, which makes an ah sound, it tells us that this should not be the accented syllable of the word. It should not be the part of the word that stands out the most. You guys still with me?
Yeah.
Yofi. I cut out, didn't I?
No, no, we hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Now it's useful to use the accent symbols like they do in Spanish to let you know when you write Hebrew and English letters which part of the word you should emphasize. So, for example, this word I'll go ahead and tell you is aniyim. Aniyim.
Aniyim. Yeah.
If I say aniyim, which part of the word is getting more emphasis? Which part is accented? Aniyim.
Yim.
That's right. So if you put it in English letters, like I'm going to do in the chat box, you want to put an accent symbol over that final part of the word. Aniyim. Right? So you might put like a little chupchik, like an apostrophe symbol over the vowels at the end to let you know that's where you're accenting the word. Or you could just put a line over the final vowels. Excuse me. To let you know that's the part accented. If you put the accent symbol over the first letter in the word, you would read it aniyim, aniyim. If you did that would be weird in Hebrew. You'd probably be understood, but it might take almost a split second to be like, what was that? Now, how do we know, just reading this, not already knowing what the word is, not knowing how to pronounce it, how would we know that you don't accent the first vowel? There's a very sure, doubtless way, 100% certain way we can know that we should not be accenting this first syllable. How do we know?
Is it because we have the Shiva and the Patach together?
It's specifically because of the schwa. You don't need anything else to tell you, just the schwa. Schwa is never never the accented syllable. If you see schwa under a part of a word, that tells you beyond a shadow of a doubt, it should not be accented. And this is according to all traditions of Hebrew. If any Ashkenazi person reads this aniyim, not only are they not doing classical Hebrew, they're violating traditional Ashkenazi Hebrew rules as well. Right? This is not supposed to be one of the differences of Jewish traditional pronunciation. All traditions understand that shwa is the unaccented syllable. And when you say shwa, make sure you're putting the accent symbol over the last vowel, shwa, and not shewa, or shva, and not sheva. If we say sheva, that's the number 7. All right, so ni. Now, how do I
Yim.
know? Go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
no, sorry. I was just saying the next.
All right, so
Apologies.
how would you know to pronounce this aniyim and not aniyim? How do you know it's aniyim with a clear Y sound and not
Because of the
aniyim? Go ahead.
because of the dot in front of the Y or
Inside of the yud, which is the Hebrew
Yud.
letter
Yeah.
Y. Right. This letter here is the Hebrew Y. So if you see a dot inside of a yud, you can know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Y sound should be audible. You should be able to hear it. So we have ani. We know this nun, the N sound, has an E sound because the vowel hiri. Ani. And then we know that we make another consonant sound, the Y sound. We know that we make the Y sound before the next vowel because we have a dot inside the yud. All right, it's always going to be that way. If there's a dot in the yud, you should hear a Y sound. Ani yim. Poor people. Mihaba. Who's next? Don't be intimidated. We already had both of these words. You want to give it a shot, Habibi?
I can try to. Let's see.
Do it. You got this. You got this.
Mud.
All right. We have a dagesh, a dot in the letter
Yeah.
over the shavah. So that tells us it's a sounded shavah.
matnot,
Perfect.
le'aniyim, la'aniyim,
Perfect. Now say it again, both of them together.
matnot, le'aniyim,
Beautiful. And mazeh, what does that mean? Mazeh?
gift for the poor.
Beautiful. And that's a big aspect of celebrating Purim. All right. Mi haba. Who's next?
Ani haba.
Kol hakavod. Baruch haba. Welcome back. Baruch haba. This one might be
Mi-
tricky, so don't take it personally.
Mishlot.
All right. There's no foot on the left leg of this. If there were a foot, like you see here, it would be a top.
Yeah.
Without the foot, it's a het. It's still
Mish
tricky.
Mishlocha.
Okay, now normally you would pronounce a word that way. Normally. Why? Because in Hebrew, first you read the letter and then you read the vowel associated with it, right? That's right,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that's what you did. And that's what you did. That's the general rule. That's what people should do. There's an exception, but the exception is consistent. Okay? So the
At the
exception
end.
is, well, only for a few letters, not for all letters. Only for a few. If you have a guttural letter that is the last letter in a word, and there's a vowel under it, you pronounce the vowel first and then the guttural sound. That's the only exception to the pattern of reading the letter first and then its vowel. The only exception is if it's a guttural letter with a vowel under it, right? At the end
So
of a syllable or word. Yes, sir. You got a question.
Mishloach.
Exactly. Exactly. And this, dear friends, is why it's important, regardless of modern Hebrew, regardless of whether your rabbi is Ashkenazi or not. Because this rule that we just learned, that in only with guttural letters you pronounce the vowel first and then the sound of the consonant. This is true in all traditions of reading Hebrew. Ashkenazim do this also. However, it's a little bit more tough for them because they don't distinguish between the letter chaf and the letter het. And chaf is not guttural. So if you see this with the chaf at the end of a word, which I don't think you're gonna, well, actually, yes, you would see it. You would. If you see a vowel under a chaf at the end of a word, you don't follow this rule because chaf is not guttural.
Oh.
You do this with the het because het is guttural. That means that those two letters make two different sounds. So that's part of the difficulty with Ashkenazi pronunciation because they pronounce them exactly the same, but they still have this rule, which they do follow, but they only follow it with, they don't follow it with chaf, they only follow it with het. And it really kind of makes no sense. It doesn't really make sense if they're exactly the same sound, right? But they're still holding on to something, so that's better than nothing, right? All right, so mishloach, it really should be from the throat with no friction in your mouth. Mishloach, mishloach, manoth, as opposed to mishloach. Mishloach, no friction. You want to give it a shot?
I'll try.
Just
I got a lot of
exhale,
friction going on here.
exhale, but you don't want friction in the cavity of your mouth. You just want
Mishloach.
to, that's good. You just want a slight restricting of the airflow in your throat.
And I kind of put the
Mishloach.
shin and the lamed together. So mishloach.
That's because this is a silent schwa. They're together because there's no vowel separating them, right? And how do we know? Because there's a schwa. Schwa means either an unaccented vowel or no vowel. And when in doubt, what should you do? When you're not sure whether it's sounded or silent, what should you do?
Keep it silent.
That's right. And because more times than not, it is silent. All right, so mishloach, that means something that is sent. Milah haba'a, next word.
Minoth.
Is it met or?
Manoth.
Yes,
Manoth.
that's right. So let's read them together.
Mishloach. Manoth.
Perfect. Perfect. If you're Ashkenazi, mishloach manos. Mishlech manos. All right, who wants
You're
some
pretty good
mishlech
at that.
manos?
You're pretty good at that.
Yeah, I had to do it for several years for the conversion process.
Ah, which means sent portions of food.
Technically, I mean, in English terms, that's what it would mean. That's right. The Hebrew technically is that which is sent. Like we don't have a word for this. This is a noun describing its state of having been sent. So I guess this is as good as we can do. And then manot are portions of food. All right. So that's a big part of Purim, sending portions of food to your friends, or to one friend specifically. Yes, sir. Mi haba. Who's next? This is another big part of Purim.
Ani haba'a.
Like
Mishte.
perfect. Kol hakavod. Excellent. Maze mishte. What is a mishte? Maze
Best,
mishte.
festive party, literally drinking.
Yes, literally, this word means uh, the act of drinking is what it literally means, or a drink. In modern Hebrew, this is used for drinks. If you want a mishte, it means you want a drink. Right? It doesn't mean I want to drink, but rather it's the noun, a drink. All right, mishte. You want to break it down for us?
Mem, hirik, with a hirik.
Yes, mem with a hirik.
Mi,
Nachon. That's right.
shin, with a shawa. Sh,
All right, now put them together.
mish.
Excellent.
Ta, with a segol. Te,
Now put them together.
mishte.
Excellent.
Hey.
All right, this is a final hey. Final hey is not a consonant. He is one of the few Hebrew letters, Yud, Vav, and He. It's one of the few Hebrew letters that can be used as a placeholder to symbolize the presence of a vowel. And it's kind of like a vestigial organ of the Hebrew language, meaning it's kind of like a, how do you say it? Something that's remaining from an older method of writing Hebrew during the period that we did not have the vowel symbols innovated yet. So it's not that Hebrew did not have vowels yet. Hebrew certainly did. You could not speak without vowels, but there was no written symbols to represent those vowel sounds. So what they did was they would use either a yud or a vav or a he to symbolize the presence of vowels. And he at the end of a word symbolized that this word would be with a vowel at the end instead of just misht, right? So if you did not put the he, you wouldn't know whether this is misht or mishte. By adding the he, we know there's a vowel here at the end. Okay? And I don't know about all Semitic languages, but many Semitic languages do that, including Arabic. Same exact thing. All right, milah haba'a. Mishte is a drink or a drinking party. This is the modern Hebrew word that's normally used for party. Modern Hebrew, as opposed to the biblical Hebrew. And it is a Hebrew word in biblical Hebrew, but it's in modern Hebrew, they give preference to using this for party. It doesn't really
Can
make
I
sense to me because this word popular now doesn't technically mean drinking, even though modern parties often involve drinking. So I don't know why we don't use this, but that's what it is. Yes, sir.
think I have heard that it's almost a commandment to be drunk on this day. Is that accurate? Or is that
It's almost like a what?
is basically it's almost a commandment to be drunk in a way.
That is the mainstream Orthodox practice.
It
I don't feel
seems,
comfortable. I don't feel
yeah, because
comfortable to say it's the opinion of most scholars. I've not done a detailed investigation, but that is the mainstream practice. What's popularly done.
okay.
It,
No, I
it,
was just wondering because it almost seems again, it doesn't seem like Torah encourages drunkenness.
it's wrong. It's not right. It's a travesty. It's a travesty.
Yeah.
We are supposed to drink according to the instruction of our sages. We're supposed to drink on Purim. Goes without saying that if you are not someone who deals with alcoholism, If you deal with alcoholism, you should not drink. Absolutely not. But if you do not struggle with alcoholism, you should drink, but you should not drink to the point of uh, serious intoxication, as is popularly pushed nowadays. It's a wonderful example, classic example, sadly, that all communities, no matter how pious, have have their own sins and have their own hypocrisies, and we have to be honest about it and not afraid to call it out. But you also have to know that calling it out and the places that you call it out may have consequences. So if you're going through a conversion process in a local synagogue, you may not want to make the biggest upheaval about this issue. There's a time and a place. But that doesn't mean you need to get drunk just because everybody else is. I'm sorry that that's a reality, but that's what it is. It's not every single Orthodox community, but it is the pervasive tendency, sadly. All right. Okay, so this word for party, we have a taker.
Ursheli.
יפה מאוד, כל הכבוד, יאח.
Let's see. Masta.
All right, let's do it syllable by syllable.
Mista.
Think
Mem-
about the vowels. Think about the
Mhm.
vowel underneath the letters before you.
Misti. Mhm.
Me, si, there's no T.
Yeah, right. Messi. Messi
You
ba.
got it. That's it. Say it 3 times real fast, jumping on one foot.
Messi ba, Messi ba, Messi ba.
You got it. You got it. You want to learn this word. It's a common, popular word. You know people love it. Tel Aviv, ya habibi. Okay. Mesiba. Mesiba. Maze mesiba. What is a mesiba?
Party or reclining to feast.
Now, this is the literal, the etymological meaning. It literally means an occasion of reclining. That's because historically they would engage in festive parties reclining. That's why we recline on Passover. And historically, the reclining wasn't just a symbolic reclining. They were all the way on their sides, like you see in portrayals of classical Greek scenes where they're all the way leaned over and someone's draping grapes over their mouth. That's the word, literally the origin of this word. It's kind of like using the term in English, inclination or an incline, as the way you say party in English. So, like, let's have an inclination or let's have an incline. The idea being, let's have an occasion of inclining while we eat. This is the common modern Hebrew term for party, even though they're not laying on their sides. Usually they're dancing. All right, milah ha'acharona. I believe this is the last word. Mihaba. This is the centerpiece of Purim. All right.
Ani haba. Oh, someone else went? I couldn't hear.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Carry. Okay, this one is Kariat. Kariat.
Right. That's in modern Hebrew.
Me. Amigo la.
Hammet. Right. We have a
Hammet.
shavas, and the shavah has a dot in the letter above it, so it's a sound of shavah. Tell me, does a sound of shavah represent an accented syllable or unaccented syllable?
An accented syllable.
An or un? I couldn't clearly hear.
Accented.
Unaccented,
No
not accent.
accent.
That's right.
Yes.
Right. Right. So there is a vowel here, a short little eh, and we know that it's not silent because there's a dot in the letter above it, but it's not accented. Go ahead. Hamme. Now do it slowly. It's better to go slow, but do it accurately than to fly.
Hamegila. Oh, I guess I'm not going too slow.
There.
Hamegila.
You got it. Let's read it again one more time, from right to left.
Qira'at Megillah.
Perfect. Maze qira'at Megillah. Maze.
Reading of the scroll of Esther.
This is implied. It literally just means reading of the scroll. And this is
Reading of the
the
scroll, yeah, true.
yeah. This is the centerpiece of the Purim observance. All right. Do we have one more volunteer? You can do it if you'd like. Let's give a moment for somebody else to speak up if they haven't spoken up yet. If they want to work on it, even just half of a word. You guys don't need to feel like you have to do everything perfectly or an entire word. Anything is better than nothing. And Habayshan Nomed. It's hard to move forward if we're too afraid to stumble. That's something you would have in common with everybody else here.
Are you asking for someone else to do the same
Yeah,
way?
yeah. If there's
Oh, I
anybody
see.
who hasn't spoken up yet who would like to give it a shot. You don't even have to read the entire word. Just two letters. Give it a shot.
Kiriath Hamigila.
Perfect.
Hamigila.
That's right. You want to tell me the name of the letter and the symbol below it. Excuse me.
Kaf.
Right? Kuf. Kuf.
Oof.
I encourage you guys when you transliterate, if you transliterate when chatting on Facebook or whatever, strongly encourage you that if you want to represent this letter in English letters, use a Q instead of a K. That will help your brain distinguish between kufs and kafs. It's more difficult to do that when you're pronouncing them the same and you're also transliterating them the same. It's not a sin, but it makes it more difficult to know how to spell and recognize words. So use a Q to represent kuf. Happens to be that the letter Q comes from kuf, literally. And do not use a K if you want to advance in Hebrew more easily. So kuf with a, what's underneath it?
Share it.
Shwa, shwa.
Shawa, yeah, Shawa.
That's right. Shwa, and we're going to accent the last syllable. So shva and not sheva. Shwa, accent the last syllable. So kuf with a shwa is okay, just a short cut.
Yeah.
Very short, not accented. Mi ot haba'a, next letter.
Resh.
Nachon, resh. If you can, you should roll it.
Resh. The Sheruk.
He. Now, this is an example, and you're helping us here to see the example of why it's not good to transliterate het and chaf with a ch, because it increases the likelihood that someone will read it like chirik or shirik instead of hirik, right? And it makes sense that someone would say shirik because people usually transliterate it with a ch. It's not good to do that. So hirik is with the letter het. You can transliterate it with an H and put a dot under it to let you know it's the het and not an H, like hey. So hirik, hirik. This is the vowel hirik.
Erik.
So resh with the hirik.
Ri.
So put the R with the E.
Ri. Ri.
Ri. That's right, ri. So now let's put that with the previous syllable.
Keri.
Yeah, kari. Okay. Oth haba'a.
Yud.
Nachon. This yud is just a placeholder. If you see yud with no vowel above or below it, that tells you that it is simply a vestigial spelling, meaning this was how they spelled before they innovated the vowels to let you know that you should pronounce a vowel here. So this yud isn't just making the same sound as the hirik, but this yud is the hirik. This yud is the hirik under here. That's why there's no vowel under the yud, because the yud is the placeholder for the hirik from the period of Hebrew development that they had no symbol for it. You guys understand what I'm saying? Because I know it sounds kind of abstract.
I'm trying to follow it, but
So originally, when we would write Hebrew, let's say during the times of Mount Sinai or in the Exodus,
sure.
we did not yet have Hebrew symbols for the vowel sounds. Is everybody familiar with that?
We didn't have the training wheel.
Yes.
Got it.
Right? It's not that Hebrew had no vowels, but we had no way to symbolize them in a written form. So what they did was they would use either a yud to symbolize a vowel, or the letter vav, or a he at the end of a word. And when they would write a yud, such as in this word, when they would write the yud here, the yud was symbolizing the presence of an e sound. That means that it was literally the same as this hirik symbol. It's just that it was in the shape of a yud instead of in the shape of a dot. You get what I'm saying now?
I understand. I think it hasn't, the concrete hasn't set, but yes. And you're not sharing. I don't know if you were trying to
Well,
share
thank
that.
you. Thank you. I wish yeah. Oh, I'm not sure why. Sometimes the little thing that hovers just disappears. I don't know why it disappears
Hmm.
on occasion. Does it disappear for you also sometimes?
Um, I haven't noticed that. I figured you hit stop sharing. Maybe there's a shortcut key that does the same thing. I'm not sure.
So if I hit stop sharing, then it disappears. That's what's going on.
So the yud becomes the here.
It became in the development of Hebrew.
Yeah.
It's not that it becomes, but they're literally symbolizing the same sound.
And would that, if the hearic wasn't there, that would be the only sound, the E. If I saw those letters,
It would be pronounced exactly the same.
there's no other say the E sound. There would be no other sound that could also be present.
There
100%
would
of the
be
time, we're going to be an E sound
the yud.
here.
The yud
Yeah.
would 100% of the time either be an E or an E sound. So it
Okay.
could make another sound, but it would be a sound similar to an E. And it could even be that in ancient dialects of Hebrew, we know that there used to be different types of Hebrew. Could very well have been that in some dialects it would have always been an E, or in some dialects it would have always been an E.
Mhm.
It was for sure one of those two. And the Masoretes and the tradition of Hebrew that they received maintained the distinction between the two. Let's not get too over our heads. All right. So Qira'at Megillah, the reading of the Torah scroll. I believe that's it. Well, you have this final word, Yehudi. Oh, we got a lot of more words. I don't want to do the whole rest of the class on that. So let us go
Well, you could go
to,
over it real quick and just you pronounce it.
well,
How many were there?
we're gonna have some other classes on preparing
Ah,
for Purim. So it's better that we use the time for something else. How did I lose it? I am not the master of the internet and screen sharing. So put this into practice. What? Everybody here is familiar with the Amidah, the central daily prayer that we say in for observant communities.
yes. Are you sharing or trying to?
I'm about to, yeah, thank
Okay.
you. All right. So we're going to look at the first line of the Amidah. The Amidah is the main prayer that we say that corresponds to the daily sacrifices. So we do it every day. Uh, Twice is required by rabbinic law, and then a third time it's de facto rabbinic law, meaning the Supreme Council of the Elders of Israel, the Great Sanhedrin, did not institute that we do it 3 times a day, but they instituted regarding doing it 3 times a day, because the third time, done at night or around nighttime, was the people of Israel voluntarily accepted upon themselves. So only 2 times a day is technically required, parallel to the temple sacrifices, the tamidim, the daily sacrifices. Would someone like to read the little intro to the short Amidah? There's a short version of the Amidah that people who are not fluent in Hebrew should be praying and not do the full Amidah until they have mastered the short form. Let's get someone to read this little intro.
One who is pressed for time or has difficulty reading can, in the drier seasons, fulfill his obligation by reciting an abbreviated version of the standing prayer.
Right? Amidah means standing, so sometimes Amidah is referred to as the standing prayer.
5 things withhold one from properly fulfilling his duty to pray the Amidah, even though the time for prayer arrived. If one prayed the Amidah while violating one of these 5, he is to pray the Amidah again properly. These are they: purity of the hands, covering of nakedness, purity of the location of prayer, absence of disturbances, and the intention of one's heart.
All right, so we begin the Amidah by reciting Psalms 51, verse 17. Right? Psalms 51, verse 17. You guys can write that down if you'd like. This is according to all communities of classical Judaism. Even the non-rabbinic, well, it's not exactly they weren't rabbinic, they had lost contact with the broader Jewish world, the Jews of Ethiopia. So even the Jews of Ethiopia who did not have the tradition of the Amidah, the overwhelming majority of them have embraced the rabbinic tradition that other Jewish communities inherited. So all classical Jewish communities have the Amidah, and they all begin it by reciting Psalm 51, verse 17. So we have a volunteer. Someone would like to read, or you guys can say after me. Your call. What do you say, Heather or Victor? Go
I'll give it a try.
right ahead. Do I need to make it large? Let me make it larger. There we go. Go right ahead. This is Psalm 51, verse 17.
Adonai, Sephatai, Tiftach, Efi, Yagid, Ufi,
There you go.
Yagid, Tehilatecha.
Beautiful. Modern Hebrew, that was modern Hebrew pronunciation. So that's easily understood by Jews of all different backgrounds. That's the advantage of the modern Hebrew pronunciation. Okay, let's translate. Do we have a volunteer who'd like to work on translating? I'll walk hand in hand with you guys. Don't worry, no trembling. First word, mi haba. Who's next? Don't keep us waiting. The suspense is killing.
I mean, sorry, I can't help.
You're occupied?
Yeah, I'm driving. I could stop in a few minutes. I just need to drive
Oh,
for a few.
don't worry. You got to get somewhere. Don't worry. We're happy you're here. However, you're listening. All right, Victor, you want to give it a gander? Wait, gander means look. I think I've been misusing that word all these weeks. Gander. Give it a shot.
I don't know if you are, but so your question is to
Do you want to
translate.
practice reading and translating? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Adonai is Hashem.
That's right. What can you tell us about this word? Tell us everything you know.
Well, let's see. There's no dot in the dalet, so it's a little softer. Ado.
That's right. It's like making a TH sound, but while humming, while activating your vocal cords. Like the TH in they or them, as opposed to the TH in think or thought.
Which
So
is not common. Common, the most people here would say Adonai.
correct,
So
correct.
when
And
you,
they're not doing that because of investigation. They're doing that because that's just what everybody's doing. It's not correct. It's objectively
yeah,
not correct. For modern Hebrew, it's correct. Modern Hebrew should not be confused with classical Hebrew. Right? All of the earliest commentators on the Hebrew language distinguished between a dot with a dagesh. I'm sorry. They distinguished between a dalet, the letter dalet, which is the letter under discussion here, with a dot, with a dagesh, and a dalet without. And they even describe how you make the sounds, where you put your tongue when you do it. Right? There's no doubt that the dalet with no dot should be a th, as in the word they or them. Some people will chime in and say, originally in Hebrew, those letters that the sound changes depending on whether or not there's a dot in it, that originally in Hebrew it wasn't that way. Maybe they're right. The problem is that it's, number one, it's speculative. That is for sure 100% not according to the tradition of Israel. But maybe the tradition of Israel is wrong, maybe. But that's not the tradition of Israel. And that idea that there was no distinction between whether or not there's a dot inside, that idea is coming from secular scholars, to be clear. It's not a Jewish tradition. And number two, having looked at the evidence for that idea, that what are known as the Beged Kefet letters, that's 6 letters in Hebrew that the sound changes depending on the presence or absence of a dot. Having looked into that idea from academics, linguists who suggest it, I can see that there may be some basis for it. However, they are not claiming it's a misrepresentation even of the non-Jewish academics who claim it. It's a misrepresentation of them to say that they're saying this regarding Hebrew of the biblical era. That's not what they're saying. They're saying like pre-biblical Hebrew made no distinction. Biblical Hebrew did make that distinction. And if you're going all the way back to pre-biblical Hebrew, you're going back so far that what you're talking about is not Hebrew as we know it. You're talking about what is often referred to as Proto-Semitic, which is a hypothesized precursor to Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. Right? It's a hypothetical, and I believe it existed, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's like reconstructed by linguists. So we assume, we hypothesize it existed because there was a lot of evidence, strong evidence, that there was a precursor to the languages that became Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, and some others as well. And that these different languages are daughters of that original language, kind of how Latin is the mother of Spanish and French and Italian, right? So even if that idea that the distinguishment between the and the, Dalet and Dalet, even if that idea is true historically, but that's not even in reference to Hebrew. That would have been, if it were the case for the parent language of Hebrew. And Hebrew is not its parent language. It developed out of it. It's a different thing. I'm not sure if any of you have ever even heard of this idea, but you will encounter it. So I'm giving you a heads up. Yes, sir.
On the same word, where'd it go?
I'll bring it. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So it's so funny. Yeah.
like on this. All right. So the last syllable.
Yes.
I tend to also pronounce it noi, adonoi.
That is the way Ashkenazi Jews usually do it.
Right.
And in this case, Ashkenazi Jews are preserving a distinction that most other Jews have lost.
Okay.
Right? So all Jewish communities
I
have something to learn from the other. Yes, sir.
Why do I get the oi in here? Because
because the kamatz is pronounced all. So you have kamatz.
So not like
plus,
AH, but OH.
Correct. Oi.
Got it.
Not ui, not I, but oi. Oh, like all.
Oy vey.
Like it's
Oy
awesome. Vey. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the normal way Ashkenazim pronounce it. And a good indication that it's likely not something in this case with regard to this vowel specifically. A good indication, an objective indication that it's not something that they picked up as a consequence of influence from European languages is that the Jews of Yemen also have it. There's a bit of a distance between the southern tip of Arabia and Poland, right? If they have commonalities and they're consciously preserved distinctions in Hebrew that exist among the Jews of Yemen and also among the Jews of Europe, then there's a good chance that it wasn't picked up from the languages of Europe. You see what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
it's in the same way that the way Ashkenazi Jews distinguish between a tav with and without a dot, they have a distinct sound. That's also something that the Jews of Yemen do. They make a distinct sound dependent on whether or not there's a dot in the tav. And also Jews of Iraq did this. It's a good indication that the that the Ashkenazi practice of distinguishing between tav with a dot and without, making a different sound for each, is not something they just picked up from European languages. Right? Despite the fact that in modern Hebrew they pronounce them both the same. If you see that the Jews of Europe are doing something and other Jewish communities separated by thousands of miles and separated by thousands of years, it's a it's a good it's good evidence that there's something to it and it's not just assimilation. All right. So the oi is to distinguish this name, this holy name of God, from a regular I suffix. The normal I suffix is plural possessive and normal plural possessive, such as yadai, my hands, or benai, my sons. This I suffix in Adonai is technically a plural possessive, my plural something. But we've made it different from the plural possessive by pronouncing it as oi instead of I.
Okay.
If you
One
say
more question
Adonai,
on that.
it sounds like you're saying my lords, like regular lords. So it sounds polytheistic.
I see.
But it's not, they don't intend for it to be, but it sounds like it. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, what do we gain, or what do we differentiate by pronouncing the dalet as a th versus a d? Or is there anything that kind of comes out messed up
Yeah,
when we
of
do that?
course.
Oh,
Of course. Um,
so if we say Adonai, do with a D, what are we accidentally doing?
so it's in common usage of Hebrew words, it doesn't sound particularly like any other word so that it would sound horrible, like some other mistakes do,
Hmm.
right? Like we've spoken before about how if you say Shema, if you say it too quickly or you accent the wrong syllable Shema, it could sound like something other than "Hear, O Israel." It could sound like "Perhaps, O Israel," or like Baal. If you mispronounce that as Baal, instead of saying that God is the master of forces, that he has relations with women, heaven forbid. So it's nothing to that extreme in the common connotations. But if you're reading a verse, there may be, excuse me, there may be a rare verb that has a dalid vav nun root, and there is such a verb. I'm struggling to remember what it is, but I'm going to look it up while I'm talking.
So
Um,
it becomes problematic in other words. So the practice needs to be maintained, is basically what we're
Absolutely.
saying.
Even if we're not
Got it.
doing it in our everyday spoken Hebrew, it needs to be maintained. If you're studying the Bible, if you're praying in Hebrew, where you will encounter words that are less commonly used, then it should be maintained because it could lead to misinterpretations. And I'm going to explain how and why. So Aleph is one of the common prefixes. You could read this as a prefix, hypothetically, right? Especially if you're not fluent in Hebrew yet, you could make this mistake. If you know enough, you may not be fluent, but you know enough to know that Aleph is a common prefix, which means I shall or I will. And then you could have a verb that is a daled nun, like to judge. So you might mistakenly think this is I shall judge,
Hmm.
just to give an example. It's not going to happen if you're a fluent Hebrew speaker because we don't normally speak like that. And this would sound like reflexive in a way that's not normally done. So I don't want to waste more time on it.
Hmm.
But long story short, if you're reading a passage and it's in the middle of the Bible where you have some words that are not commonly used in modern spoken Hebrew, it could be that there's a word like unto this, but it would have a dot inside of it instead of absence of a dot. Right. So knowing that difference, being conscious of that difference could help you understand the text more correctly and not mistakenly think, oh, it says Lord here, when really it's saying, I shall be my own judge or something like that. All right, milah haba'ah. So we're beginning this verse, Psalm 51, verse 17, with my divine Lord. Okay? We reserve this for only for the true God, Adonai. Whereas if you say Adonai, that's my lords. If you're a servant and you have more than one owner, you would say my lords, Adonai. But this is Adonai, Oi. All right, milah haba'ah. Next word.
Sefa, tai,
All right, modern Hebrew, sfatai, sfatai. Right, in biblical Hebrew,
Sfatai.
sapathai, sapathai. All right,
Sefathai.
so we have a, similar to here, we have a I suffix. That means plural possessive. That means it's mine and it's more than one. So my plural, XYZ. My plural, safa. So the question is, what is safa?
Lips.
Ah,
That's right, lips. So safa is one lip, and we know it's lips plural because of the I suffix. I suffix means it's mine and it's plural. It both indicates possession and number that is plural. Right? If you just said safa, that's lip singular, but safatai are my lips. Very good. And why is it not safa he or safa hi? Why is it safatai or safathai in biblical? What happened to the hey? Normally there'd be a hey here. Let's write it down. Let's write it down. If you have a Hebrew word that the final letter in that word is the letter hey, right? The hey when it's acting as a placeholder for a final vowel. So we're not pronouncing it when we read it as a huh. It's just symbolizing the presence of a vowel, right? Like aha, a h at the end, h-a-h, aha. That final h in English, you're not pronouncing it as a h. It's just symbolizing something with a vowel. So when you have a word in Hebrew that ends with a final hey, with no vowel there, if you add on a suffix to that word, which is very common in Hebrew, then you should know that the hey is going to transform into a tav. Always. So if you see a tav at the end of a word, there's a very high likelihood that the basic form of that word does not have a tav. What would it have in the place of that tav normally? What could you assume?
hey.
That's right. If you see a tav at the end of a word, you can assume that in its normal form, it's a hey. And that tav, the hey became a tav. It's not that it's something else. That hey became a tav to indicate some kind of conjugation or some kind of relationship to the next word. In this case, I'm going to share my screen again. In this case, the hey became a tav because we added the suffix, the possessive suffix mine. But if we remove the suffix, if we remove the possession pronoun, the possessive pronoun my, then this would turn back into an he, and it would just be safa. Sin, fe, he. It's important to know because it's not just with this word, it's with any word, any feminine word in Hebrew. The final he turns into a tav if you modify it, if you conjugate the word, change the tense of it, or add a suffix to it. All right, milah haba'ah. Who's next? Just to read the word.
I mean, come on.
Kol hakavod. Kol
Is
hakavod.
this okay? See, tefta? Is it tefta? Tefta?
Excellent. That's right.
Tifta. Yeah.
Tiftah. Tiftah. That's right. Now the het, you want to pronounce, make sure you're pronouncing it when it's at the end of a word. And it's better to mispronounce the het at the end of a word. It's better to
Tiftach. Okay.
yes. It's better to pronounce it wrong, but to hear it as a rather than to not pronounce it at all. However,
Okay.
we should work on pronouncing it correctly. Historically, in proper Hebrew, the het would not be a cha. The cha sound is the letter cha, this letter. If we're pronouncing
Yeah.
it properly, there would be zero friction in the main oral cavity from your teeth, from your lips, back to your uvula. Right? Who can tell us what the uvula is?
A little bell hanging on your tongue.
That's right. It's a little bell looking thing in the back of our tongue that we would all prefer to forget about.
Yeah.
All right. So if we're going to define the difference between a guttural letter and a non-guttural letter, guttural letters would be letters that their point of origin, where they're originating from in your head, they're originating beyond the uvula. They're originating not between your uvula and your teeth, but rather they're originating beyond your uvula in your throat. That's our definition for guttural letter. That is why the letter chaf, even though a lot of people call it guttural because it sounds exotic compared to English, that's why chaf is not treated as a guttural letter in Hebrew. Because it is not guttural, it's not produced beyond the main body of your mouth, the main cavity of your mouth. Chaf is produced between your uvula and your teeth. It's produced near your uvula, but still in your mouth. You can still feel with the tip of your tongue, you can feel where the chaf is produced. It's produced by creating friction with a flow of air between the back of your tongue and the soft part of the roof of your mouth, what's called the soft palate. Right? Whereas het is not. Het is not produced in the main cavity of your mouth. When you are trying to make the sound of het, if you're doing proper het, as opposed to modern Hebrew simplification, if you're doing a proper het, there should be zero friction occurring between your uvula and your lips. So where is it made?
Okay.
How's it made? You're just exhaling like the letter H, it's like the letter H, like help, or he helped her. Huh. You're just exhaling, but it's different from a regular H because you're slightly tightening your throat. You're not closing it off. You're not cutting off the flow of air. You're not making hard friction like ha. It's closer to the sound
Okay.
of H than to the sound of ha, which is why the sages,
Tiftah.
tiftah, it's more like a
Tiftah.
loud, it's like a loud whispered exhale.
It's like an exhaling breath. Yeah.
It's just
Tiftah.
an exhale. Tiftah,
Okay.
tiftah, and not tiftah. Not that.
Okay.
Tiftah. Think of it
Yeah,
as a
I'm gonna have
loud
a hard
whispered
time.
H.
That is my
Think of,
struggle. I emphasize those the hats a lot.
you mean
A lot.
how do you distinguish it from ha? Right? So the
Um,
difference is ha, which looks like the backwards C, ha
mhm.
has very clear, harsh friction in the main cavity of your mouth. That is ha. There's hard
Yeah.
friction in the main cavity of your mouth between your uvula and your lips. That's where it's occurring, on the soft palate of the roof of your mouth with the back of your tongue. That is ha. With het, there's no friction. Your roof of your mouth should not be coming into contact with the back of your tongue. That's
Okay.
het. It's occurring with an exhale and a slight constricting of your throat, slight constricting of your throat behind, back, beyond your uvula, not in the main cavity of your mouth. So het is guttural because it's not in the main cavity of your mouth. Chaf is not guttural because it is in the main cavity of your mouth. All right? Chaf
Yeah.
sounds like you're hawking up a loogie. Chaf sounds like you're trying to clear out a lot of phlegm from your throat, right? That's het just sounds like you're exhaling in a loud whisper. Help, he helped her. That's helped, right? It's a lot more soft.
Yeah.
All right, Victor, you're in the limelight. Come on, Victor.
Hi.
Hi. But it's like you have trouble breathing, so it's really right, but no friction. No friction.
No friction. All right. You want me
Heather,
to say this word?
Heather, I want Heather to come up here. I want Heather to tell
Heather,
us.
Heather's dropped off. That's what I was
Oh,
checking
okay.
on.
Okay, Victor, which one should have a lot of clearly noticeable friction? Which one?
The one that you're not sharing.
What's the name of the letter? It looks like a C.
Oh,
Backward C.
oh, the het.
Backward C is not het.
Tough.
And it's forgivable, the confusion. You're confused
No, it's
easily.
not forgivable.
You're confused easily about it, and not just you, but a lot of people,
Yeah.
because they don't make it, they teach them like they're the same thing, you
Yeah.
know? So it's forgivable, but we're gonna work through that. And it's a
Well,
big, big
yeah.
problem because you could
I
have a
think for
word,
me, it wasn't so much that I was trained a certain way, but it was like it looks like a backward C. So it's like, huh, you know, to me that's why
but that's not het, but that's not het,
that's
right?
just why
That
I
is
do it.
chaf.
But yeah. Okay.
That's chaf. And this is also important because you have letters, you have words I'll give you an example. You have mehake and mechake. In modern Hebrew, they pronounce them the same, but one means to copy and one means to wait.
Hmm.
The same way you have uh, likroa, you have tikra and tikra. You have tikra, tikra, and tikra. There's a difference, tikra and tikra. But in modern Hebrew, the younger people, don't distinguish. So if I tell you tikra et ze, you don't know if I'm saying read this or rip this. Am I telling you to rip it or to read it? There's actually a few demonstrations of this on YouTube where some
Okay.
Israelis are trying to drive home the point with a little trivia, and the person they're not looking. There's someone behind them telling them to do things, and they have like some instruments or tools, and they're waiting to see what they're going to do. So he's telling them to read the page, but half of the people are ripping it, because they don't know if he's saying to read it or to rip it.
Hmm.
Usually, outside the context of a trivial situation, usually it's clear from context. But if you just overheard someone or they like mumbled, you couldn't hear them too well, or your mom yelled at you across the room to do something, in those cases, it's easy to misunderstand. But if they would pronounce them clearly, it would be easy to understand what they are saying and what they're not saying. Right? So it's not only about biblical scholarship. There's a practical loss by losing half the Hebrew alphabet.
All right.
Yes,
I see
sir.
Heather's back, by the way.
Welcome back, Heather. Tiftah. Tiftah means you shall open. So the tav prefix means you shall. You shall, and then the root is open. So, oh, my incomparable Lord, my lips you shall open. Heather, you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Which part of the highlighted word means you shall?
I missed all that conversation if you talked about it already.
That's all right. That's all right. Let's write it down. Everybody write it
My
down.
my internet dropped out, so
No problem. I feel that. I have precarious internet over here also. So the way you say you shall in Hebrew is by adding a letter tav to a word, to a verb root. You just take the root of the verb, just the three-letter root of the verb. You add a tav to the beginning. And that means you shall do whatever is the verb. In this case, tah is open. Adding a tav at it makes it you shall open. Tiftah, you shall open, or you will open. This is the normal way of saying you will, whoever the you is, you will do X, Y, Z. right? So we've learned two prefixes today. We've learned the aleph prefix means you shall. I'm sorry, the aleph prefix means I shall. Aleph is a first person prefix. That's not what it's doing here in this highlighted word, but if you didn't know any better, you might assume that. We were discussing that earlier. So aleph added to a verb means I will do whatever the verb says. I will. That's aleph. So aleph for ani, which means me or I. Tav for ata. Tav added to a verb is you will. All right, Mr. Victor, tell us what you wrote down.
I wrote down that the prefix aleph will mean I shall do
Right.
whatever the rest of it is
Who can give us
saying.
a famous example? Famous example. I blank that I blank. How do we say that in Hebrew?
Oh, ani.
So it's one of the references to God, one of the
Let's see.
most famous references.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank because I haven't read that in a while.
So usually they translate it as I am that I am, but there is
Yeah.
no present tense am in Hebrew. It's there's also not a perfect translation, but it's closer to I shall continue to be as I shall continue to be what I will be, something along those
Is
lines.
it Yehiyeh, Asher Yehiyeh?
So Yehiah is the yud prefix, the y prefix. Yehiah would mean he
Okay.
shall be as he shall be. But because God was referring to himself, he did not use the y that we have in his holy name, right? That's one of the
Mm,
almost certain reasons why it begins with a y, because we're referring to him and we are not him. But when he spoke to Moses, he didn't
mm.
say Yehiah. He said Ehyeh, referring to
Yehiyeh,
himself.
yeah,
I shall be. That's the same prefix here, the I shall or the I will. Isn't that
yeah.
cool?
It is pretty cool.
It's kind of like anytime you refer to yourself or to someone else, there's like a hint of a reference that we're made in his image,
Mm.
right? We're all carrying a piece of his name, so to speak. Not that we're literally God, God forbid. Not that we're even a piece of God, God forbid. Not that he's literally housed inside of us, heaven forbid, right? But figuratively speaking, um, there's there is some reminder of his being in everyone, right? Some indication, right, in our being. So our being is an indication and a reflection of his existence. All right. So the aleph prefix is I shall be, and that's in God's most one of his holy names, yeah, which is I shall continue being what I will be. So that in it's an implication that he shall be as he is. He's unchanging. All right, next prefix. We learned two prefixes now. Actually, yeah, two. What's the other prefix? These are common, so it's worthwhile writing them down, putting them on your refrigerator door. And when you look through the prayers, the Shema or the Torah portion, keep your eyes open for these. Aleph at the beginning of words, Tavs at the beginning of words, Yud at the beginning of the word. It's all over the place, all over the place. Look, here's a Yud. Here's a Yud in God's name. Here's a Yud. Here's a Yud. They're all over the place. Here's a Yud. So what does the Yud mean when you add it to a verb? And at the beginning of a word, it's a good indication that it's a verb, not a noun. What does the Yud mean? We just mentioned it. So whereas the
The third
Aleph,
person,
yes, that's right. What does that mean? Can you explain what third person means?
referring to we referring of in this case of Hashem rather than in the as a third person, not as talking as given the context as we are the persons.
Okay, so and let's try to summarize it. Simply speaking, third person is when you are referring to someone and not talking to them. You're referring to them, not talking to them. So it's the difference between saying You, Victor, are my friend. That is not third person because I'm talking to you. That's as opposed to third person where I would say, Victor, he is my friend. I'm referring to him, but I'm not talking to him. That's third
Mhm.
person. When you refer to someone or a group of people. All right, so yud, the letter yud, the Y, comes at the beginning of a verb when you're referring to someone else doing an action and you're not talking to them. You're talking about them, right? That's as opposed to the tav, like we have here, tiftah, where it's second person. You're talking to them. So to recap, first person, you're referring to yourself. I or we, the group I belong to, that's first person. That's your first point of reference. Your second point of reference is the people you communicate to, right? So second person is you, whoever I'm speaking to. And then your third point of reference, you're not talking to them, and it's not you. You're not even a part of them. It's totally separate. You're talking about them. That's third person. Third person. Mr. Victor, can you summarize for us one more time? It's heavy stuff, I know. Heavy stuff.
Sorry, I had to step away.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Heather, can you fill in the gap before the building collapses?
Are you talking about first, second, and third person?
Yeah. Just try to summarize it. Yeah. You
So
can
first,
use and you can give an example with a pronoun in English, like we, they, she, he, and tell us what each one is.
so first person would be I do whatever. Second
Or
person would
how
be
or we,
right.
because you're
Or
included.
second person would be you do such and such. And third
Right.
person would be he, she, or they do
Talking
such and
about them,
such.
not to them. Exactly. Okay, so we have three prefixes today. They indicate verbs. The aleph prefix indicates first person singular, I. I will pray. It's palel. I will praise God. A hallel. A hallel. Like hallelujah. Hallelujah. You can't learn that the word hallelujah means praise Yah and then say, Ani hallelujah. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because the verb changes. The same way in English, you wouldn't say I eats. You would say I eat. You don't say I eating or I eats, right? So you have to know how it changes. The way it changes, if you want to say I'm doing the action of praising, like hallelujah, you would say an aleph at the beginning. Ahalel, ahalel yah, ahalel yah. I shall praise Yah. If I want to say you, the person I'm speaking to, you will praise, I add a what at the beginning? A tav. Tav. We add a T sound, like we have here, tiftah. You shall open. Tiftah. So if I want to say you shall
Mm.
praise, instead of ahalel yah, what would I say? You just add the tav at the beginning. Instead of ahalel, replace the a with a. Come on, you guys. Don't
Talel,
be. Say it again, louder.
Talel, Talel,
Tahalel. Tahalel.
Tachalel,
Yeah.
Tachalel.
Tahalel. All right. Now, if I want to say he will praise, I'm not talking to him, I'm talking about him. I replace the top with a yud.
Yichalel.
Yahalel. He shall praise. You got it. You got it. You got it. How does that feel?
Yay!
That's
Is it
It's
good.
great.
clicking? Is it clicking? Does it
It's
feel a little?
clicking, except I may forget by next week.
I was
No.
going to
You
say,
got to write
I'm
notes.
going to forget 3 minutes. Yeah.
This is so basic. And when you start to pick up on it, it's like
Falls in.
even when you see words in Hebrew that you don't know what they mean, but you're seeing these
Mm,
indicators. So even if you don't know what the word means, you know that this is someone doing something. Suddenly,
mm.
even if you don't know 100% what it means, you know it means like you have a grasp of someone's doing something instead of just empty words on a page. You know what I'm saying? It's a
You know what?
big step.
What makes it difficult for me, I guess, is that even the normal grammatical rules that we use, in this case, English, my native language, I learned the language, I know the language, so I don't think about the different rules and how it
Yeah.
functions. And when you learn another language, you have to understand these things to be able to put it in the proper
I
context
mean,
and place.
you could if you had the ability to, you maybe could get
Yeah,
around it through immersion. It would take a lot longer if you didn't know these explanations, but you would probably
yeah,
eventually get it. But the fact of the matter is, most of us wouldn't be here if you had the ability to be immersed, right? You'd be going
yeah,
attending classes in person. Um, and also, even in immersion, you will learn much more quickly if you're explained these simple tools of the language, basic tools of the
yeah.
language. They're just three simple letters that by adding them at the beginning of a word, one, it tells you that it's a verb, not a noun. So you know it's whatever it is, it's an action. Two is telling you who's doing it. And it's three is telling you when it's happening. It's telling you that it's either in the process and going to continue happening or it will happen, right? Future
Yeah.
tense.
Oh,
Aleph,
this is good.
Aleph, I will. Tav, you will. Yud, he will. Okay. And you can help yourself remember what each one is because the prefix that's added to the word is contained in the pronoun that it symbolizes. What's a pronoun? Who can tell us what a pronoun? I know everybody knows what these things are, but some of us may have forgotten because we don't use the words since we were in like sixth grade. So what's a pronoun? Come on, Victor. I see that smile, Victor. Victor's waiting for Heather.
No, you should read my comment. You can read it out loud.
Oh, come on, Heather. What's a pronoun?
He, they, I, she.
So they are nouns that that are a word that can be used in a sort of universal way. It's like a non-specific noun, but it gives you some kind of concept who you're talking about. So like he could be anyone. So it's a general noun. It could apply to anyone, but you know whether or not you're talking to them, about them, or you are them, right? So the he, that's like we said, third person, but it's a reference, like a general reference. Those are pronouns, right? As opposed to like house, which is also a noun, but it's not that general. He, she, they, we, these are very broad. So
So
these
basically,
prefix, go ahead.
we'll say basically a word that replaces a name of a person,
A
place,
specific name or something.
item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are pronouns. Right.
Would
So like it's
structure qualify rather than a house? Like, in other words, structure versus house?
you mean like
If the structure has
timber?
a name,
You mean like building blocks? I don't know
Well,
what you
like a
mean.
neighborhood, has here's a house, but it's full of structures, or I don't know. I'm
No,
just
so
trying to.
pronouns can refer to anything. A
Okay.
pronoun can stand in the place of any noun. A noun is a person, place, or a thing. Any thing you can point to is a noun,
Mm-hmm.
or specific concept is a noun. Whereas a verb is an action, something it refers to doing, right? But a pronoun can refer to any noun. Even a house can be included if you say they. Like they are big houses. Normally we would say those are big houses, but it's the
Yeah.
same. Those is also a pronoun. So that's what a pronoun
pronouns
is.
are very common. Pronouns are very common now in the workplace. Just
Yeah.
kidding.
Oh no.
So sorry, going on a different tangent. Never mind.
Wait, I missed what you said, so you have to say it again. Say it
They say
again.
pronouns are very common at the workplace now because you have to accommodate for whatever they think they are,
Yeah.
not
Maybe in
what they are.
Canada, not in the US anymore. That's going the way of the dodo, Habibi.
True. Thank goodness.
Yeah. So we don't need to keep them on our names here. We can drop our pronouns.
Let's put it this way. Okay, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't care if you consider me a heretic. There are people who have conditions. Some conditions are legitimate, some they're just mental issues. Some people don't have a condition, don't have a mental issue, they just have an agenda, right? But some
Right.
people, for sure, most of what we're seeing in the news are people with agendas. But there are people with legitimate conditions. There are people who are born not because they have radical leftist parents pushing them. There are people who are legitimately born, and we should not act like they don't exist. You don't know who these people are. You might assume that they're don't have any issue and they do. You have no way of knowing. So it
Sure.
doesn't help religious people, as many conservative pundits do, act like they don't exist. They do. We shoot ourselves in the foot by acting like everybody is simple.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, reality is not always simple. But what I was
Would
going to
the
go ahead.
well would they not assign themselves? In other words, let's just say
Right.
that I'm not sure what I am, but
So
you
so
don't
what I was
really live your whole life without accepting one of them,
so
or
what I
they
was going to
yeah
so what I was going to say is, and these are hard topics. We don't really have
yeah
time to
yeah
get
yeah
super into it. But what I was going to say is that even though there are people with legitimate conditions and they themselves may not, I encourage everybody to watch some documentaries on intersex people. That's
yeah
the technical term for it, intersex. And it's more than one condition, but it's the term that describes not trans like drag queen. It's not the same as drag queens, which is another big mistake that conservative commentators often make that make us look stupid. You can be conservative and have conservative values without making us look stupid. What do you call it? A drag queen with over exaggerated breasts and a huge wig is not what an intersex person is,
no
right? An intersex person is born with a certain condition, and you can usually see externally, you can see that they're born with something which is an anomaly. And it doesn't mean that there's 1,000 different genders. There's only two archetypal genders, male and female. But there are people who have a condition where it's not clear what they are, or they may legitimately be a fusion of both. There are
right
people who have a fusion of both. So those people, assume someone is one of those types of people. Um, they, number one, should never be treated like crap, which I assure
hmm
you many of them are, and which is a travesty. And that gives strength to other political agendas to say, oh, you bigots, we should stop being bigots. But if someone is one of those genders or one of those conditions, if they are dressing in a way that looks like what most people will understand to be female, they're just carrying a chip on their shoulder. If they're going to be upset at you for dressing them as female when internally they feel like a male, you know, and vice versa. If they really feel like a female, but they're presenting themselves in a way that they know almost everybody's going to assume to be male, they cannot be upset that you refer to them as a male, right? And you shouldn't feel bad about making that mistake. But there can be someone who's kind of, because gender is not only your genitalia. The brain is, there's structural differences between male brains and female brains. We're speaking generally. And people who have these anomalies, they can have differences in the structure of their brain, where in the same way that their genitalia is a mix of male and female, the brain can have structures in common with both, which makes it
sure.
different from the average male who would be more in conformity with the norm, or the average female. So they can have a condition where they're not really sure whether they're male or female. And so you can see how they might identify as the they. So in those cases, even if you make a mistake, they're probably going to be uh, forgiving toward you. If you make the mistake, they tell you what they feel like they are or whatever. And you don't have to tolerate 1,000 different genders. There are not 1,000 different genders. But if they feel more comfortable with saying they, it's not a big deal to say they, right? It's not everything is political. If somebody is born, and I'm not talking about just transgenderism where there's no physical indication. There are people with legitimate physical indications
Right.
that there's a condition. We should be respectful of these people. Like they did not choose to be born like that, and to make them feel like crap, you're not being a saint. You're not sticking up for traditional values by doing that. What we do when we're making an issue of calling someone a he, even though they say that they're a she, but maybe their face looks masculine. You don't know what's under their pants. Who are you to
Right.
ask them what's under their pants? I, I know I know more than one woman in person, and I've had Uber passengers who I thought might be like a drag queen or cross dressing, and then I figured out they're actually a woman. They just have really like overly developed bone structure. Maybe too much testosterone in the womb. I don't know. but I should not like you don't know when it's an actual woman and you're like trying to make it a political thing. We don't want to be like that. So how did we get on this tangent? I don't remember.
It was
Reel
my
me in
fault.
here.
Sorry.
Reel
Sorry.
me in here. Oh,
Pronouns.
okay. Pronouns.
It
Pronouns
was
over here.
the
Yeah.
pronouns,
But
but
it's
sorry.
it's a valid topic to talk about, and a lot of times things are avoided. And most people, unfortunately, because of the extremist media, are on one extreme or another, and they don't understand that there's nuance in the world.
Sure, sure.
Our sages talked about this stuff 2,000 years ago. That precedes the Republican and Democrat political parties by 2,000 years. You can find it mentioned in the Mishnah. These anomalies exist. So we have to be compassionate. When in doubt, be compassionate. If they're not trying to sneak into the little girl's room dressed as a man, be compassionate. All right. That's a whole different situation. Yeah, we're close to wrapping it up. If anybody has any questions, I think Heather has something
No,
bubbling up.
I was just gonna suggest wrapping up.
All right. I got you now. I know the look. Okay. If anyone has any questions about anything we've spoken about, maximum maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, and then we're gonna end it.
I have a question, but unrelated. But I don't know if we have time.
If not, ask the question, and I can answer in the WhatsApp if it would be.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
what's up?
So let's get to this one. I recently was asked the question because they were talking to me about religion, I guess, and they had the notion that people are here to, in a sense, be like Jesus. I disagree with that, and they asked me, so what is the purpose of humanity existing?
Okay.
I'm reading the book of The Guide to the Perplexed. I think there is some answer to that, but I haven't got really quite to the answer. So I'm really curious. I guess not curious, but I eventually I
One of
get
my
it.
favorite
But
books. That is one of my favorite, but that's a heavy
yeah,
book. That is a
it
heavy.
is.
Wow.
And but anyway, so the point is, when we are asked that question, people usually want to have a reason for existing, right? So, and the reason is to, in their case, Christians to be like Jesus. In our case, what can we say is the purpose of humanity other than to worship God? Because they
There's
see
always
that as an act.
there's always going to be an element of not knowing why we're alive.
Yeah,
We can know something, but we can't know the fullness of it because if
yeah,
Hashem, if the creator is the ultimate reason, then in the same way that we can never truly know the greatness of his reality as it truly is, and we also can't know the true reason in its fullness as it truly is. Because if he's the ultimate cause, whatever his reason is, but he and his reason, he and his will, he and his knowledge is all one and the same, right? So to know
yeah,
to truly know the fullness as it truly is, his reasons, his knowledge, any of these things, is to truly know him as he truly is. They're all one and the same. They only exist as different words in our language because of the limits of human speech. So, uh, aside from that, saying that we can't know, we can know what God has revealed through what He's told us, right? So, to do His commandments, to exercise His will, and we know that there are certain goals that He's let us know about in the Torah that are like the ends of His will, meaning the goals of these commandments. And one of those is that we will rejoice, that we will know joy, that we will know Him, that we will know goodness, that we will experience goodness. So those are different reasons. You could also say, in a way, to serve Hashem, absolutely. And you could also say, if we want to give it in the broadest terms, we know Him and we serve Him by walking in His ways. And this can be a way in which we can relate it to Christians in a way that maybe they will more easily be able to digest it. Because if, as they say, Jesus was like the example of how one should live, if he was like the epitome or the ideal of walking in God's ways, whether or not that's the case, but that's how they understand it, then you can correlate it to serving God is walking in his ways. And this is not in reaction to Christianity. This is listed as one of the 613 commandments in the Torah and in the list of the 613 commandments. We've already read it, I believe, in the Rambam's book of mitzvot, book of commandments. So walking in God's ways, if Jesus is the example of walking in God's ways, then we're doing the same thing. It's just that we're doing it with God's word as he expressed it to the people of Israel, as written in the Torah, and they're doing it as they see it in the person of Jesus. I would just say that you can't be sure whether Jesus is a legitimate example or not unless you look at the Torah that God already gave, right? Otherwise, you have no way of knowing. You're just groping in the darkness or just assuming.
Yeah.
But that's
Cool.
that. All right,
Thank
you
you.
guys. On that note, we're going to finish off with our prayer. Because this is the Hebrew day, sorry, I know everybody's in a rush to go, but we're going to get someone to read. If you really need to go, feel free to go. We will not be. This is the final prayer when we leave a house of study. All right, be careful when you guys read. For the sake of speed, you might feel confident, but it's better to slow down and make sure you're reading the vowels correctly than to fly. If we have a taker.
Okay. Mode ani lifanecha Adonai Elohai.
That was excellent, Habibi. Mamash tov. All right. I am grateful before you, O eternal my God. All right. Who's next? Mihaba.
אני הבאה, ששמת חלקי מיושבי בית המדרש.
Suyan. That you have placed my portion among those who dwell in the house of study. Mihaba. And go up to here.
Okay. אני הבא,
Kol hakavod.
below Simaat
All
or
right, let's go
Simta. Simta
slowly.
at the same time.
Sam.
Samta. And Hilki. And
Anytime there's
Mio.
a dot in the yud, you know to pronounce it as a Y.
Yeah. Miyosh Bay or Miyosh Bay. Um,
If you guys do
Karanoth.
modern Hebrew instead of classical Hebrew, it's good enough. That's good enough.
Okay, Karanoth.
Excellent. وَلَا سَمْطَ حَلْقِي مِنْ يُشَبِّهْ قَرَنُوث. And you have not placed my portion among those who dwell idly on street corners. Right? Mihaba. Who's next?
Ani haba.
Barakavod. Take your time reading.
She ani mash mashkim
Yeah, K is in kite.
mashkim wahem mash kamim mashkamim
All right, look at the vowels.
mashkayamim
Hold on. Look at the
mashki
vowels.
mashkim mim.
You got it. Mashkimim. Mashkimim. No Y sound because there's no vowel above or below the yud. If there's no vowel above or below the yud, and there's no dot in the yud, as you see here,
Mhm.
then you don't pronounce it as a Y.
Drop.
Yeah. Mashkimim. All right, so I get up early. Ani mashkim. And they get up early. Wehem mashkimim. All right. Mihaba. Mihaba batur. Who's next in line? Mihaba batur.
טור שלי.
Kol hakavod, neshama.
אני משכים לדברי תורה
Oh, you did it right. I'm sorry. I'm getting too antsy here.
והם משכימים לדברים
All right, so let's do it one more time, slowly.
לדברים
Got it.
בטלים.
Beautiful, beautiful. Ani mashkim, what does that mean? Right? I get up early. Ani, mashkim, rise early, early, early. It's like before dawn. All right? Ledivre Torah, unto words of Torah. Wehem, and they, mashkimim, get up early. Lidvarim batalim. Someone want to translate this? Lidvarim? What is lidvarim?
The words
All right, to the words or
to
unto
the
words,
words. Yeah.
unto words, batalim, empty, empty things. It doesn't literally mean empty. It means like invalid or
Worthless.
no substance. Yeah,
Worthless.
yeah, yeah. All right, mihaba,
Ani
mihab.
amel. Ani amel.
تمشي تمشي.
Bechem. Bechem. Emelim. Amelim.
Let's do it again. Look at the accent. We have a shawa under the ayn. So should it be sound? Should it be the accented syllable or unaccented?
Amelim. Amelim. Amelim.
Amelim, amelim.
Amelim. Amelim. There you go.
Let's read it one more time.
Ani amel. Bechem. Amelim.
All right, now this one also. Let's read it again. Tell
Bechem.
me which. Hold on. Two things. We need to know which syllable is accented, and the he should have no friction, zero friction.
The
Which
is
syllable?
the first syllable.
First syllable,
Bechem
what? Should or
should
should not
be.
be?
I would say should, but maybe shouldn't.
Okay, so understand the symbol of shawa to mean unaccented. It
Unaccented.
specifically
There you
means
go. Oh,
don't. Yeah, it specifically means do not accent. Okay, so if you
yeah.
see a shawa under a letter, do not accent ever, ever, ever. You pronounce the letter, but don't accent the syllable. All right, so let's read it again.
Vehem. Vehem.
Is it vehem or vehem?
Vehem.
If you say vehem, you're accenting the first
The,
syllable,
the
vehem.
first one. Yeah.
And you don't want to do that because there's a shawa. Because there's a schwa, is telling you accent the next syllable. So
Yeah.
instead of vehem, it's
Vehem.
that's it, vehem. All right, one more time, Habibi.
Ani amel. Vehem. Oh, sorry. Vehem.
Got it.
Amelim.
Beautiful. That was beautiful. All right. I work hard and they work hard. And Emmanuel just worked really hard. Next.
Yes.
It paid off. All right. Next word.
Ursheli.
כל הכבוד.
Ani. Amel. Amel. Um. Mifbel.
So, slowly. This is a quf,
Mif.
like the letter Q.
Um. Kabel.
Perfect. Say it two times.
Kabel.
And أني عمال مقبل. Right?
Ani.
تمشي.
Umel. Kabel. Sahar.
Kaf should have hard friction. Het,
Sakar.
no friction. Het is no friction. Kaf is hard friction.
I guess that'll be the last letter that I figure out. Sakar.
Sachar.
Sahar.
Perfect.
Wahem.
Good. تمشيخ.
Amalim.
Good. Which should we or should we not accent the first? I'm just asking. I'm not correcting.
Should not.
How do you know?
Amalim.
How do you know?
Because of the two dots over each
That's
other
right.
there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different page.
נכון. All right. تمشيخ. You're doing excellent. حلال على الزمان. If yud has no vowel above or below it, then it's just symbolizing the presence of the vowel under the previous letter.
What on? What
What
on?
vowel? What vowel
what-
is this?
to Aleph, but
Aleph
the
itself is not a vowel.
yeah.
Don't think of Aleph as a vowel. So the
Six.
vowel
No,
sere, sere,
didn't have it written
sere.
down. Sarah.
Yeah, this is the vowel that excuse me, this is the vowel that Ashkenazim usually pronounce as a all the time. But all other Jewish communities pronounce it as e. No diphthongs in vowel symbols. E. All right, so
Wait,
let's read it
wait, weigh in.
one more time. Ignore the yud because this is the yud.
uh, when, when?
Well, aleph has a consonantal sound. It's called a glottal stop. It's a sound. So if you have an aleph with a vowel, you need to hear a break, a separation sound, like So instead of when, you have to hear two separate, distinct syllables.
Okay. What
So,
N?
hmm?
Mif, uh,
Poof. Pew.
meek, 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 belim,
Beautiful. How did you know this shva should be sounded?
the dot in the
That's right.
middle of the bet.
That's right. If there's a dot in the letter over the schwa, you do sound the schwa as an unaccented e.
But I probably was lucky.
Well, you gave the correct answer, so I think
There you
you
go.
maqabbelim, maqabbelim.
Makabalim, sam, sak, sak, sakar,
Right, let's make it a little more friction sounding.
sahar.
That's it. That's it. Sakhar.
Hmm.
Very good. Excuse me. So I work hard and I receive reward. They work hard, but they don't receive reward. Mihaba.
Ani haba'a.
Kol hakavod.
Ani ros wahem rosim.
Beautiful. You want to translate it? This root word means running. That should be enough.
I run and they run.
Excellent. Do you want the pleasure of doing a little more?
Yes.
All right, let's
Ani,
go up to here. Up to here.
ani ros lehaye ha'olam haba'a. Haba.
Got it. One more time.
Ani ros lehaye ha'olam haba.
Mitsuyan. Really good. All right. I run into the life of the world to come. Mihaba.
Um, that's me.
Be careful with
Let's see.
be careful
I
with
know
the
that gets me every time.
yeah.
Vechem,
And no
vechem,
friction on the haze. We
yeah,
gotta let go of that friction. Just
yeah,
relax. Relax your throat. Open your mouth as you're saying it.
vechem,
Wahem, like you're just breathing out.
vechem, vechem,
Wahem.
vechem,
That's it.
ratzim, live
Live,
air,
live or leave.
live air, live air.
Leave air, leave air.
Um, Shachath,
Shahath, shahath. Mitsuyan.
Shachath.
Mitsuyan. Excellent, excellent. So I run into the life of the world to come, but they're running into a pit of destruction. Would you want to finish us off with a short prayer of thanks to God in your own words for our time and wishing a good week?
Sure.
Bechavod.
So, our Father, we thank you for this opportunity to learn together Torah and learn the Hebrew language. For the time that the Rabbi has spent with us. We pray for your courage and your strength throughout this week, that we will remember the lessons of Torah and apply them into our lives and be a light in this world and And as we continue to walk in this path to learn more about your Torah and draw near you and cleanse our hearts and our minds from our all ways and practices, and to be submissive to your will and to adapt a Torah lifestyle that is according to your commandments and your will. And we pray for your blessings throughout this week for all of this group and for the rabbi, and that we'll continue to learn as we are given more each day of life. And we thank you for your love and mercy, for we know it's abundant. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you very much. Shavua tov lekulam. Shavua tov.